Chapter 2154. Sister Shui. At this time, Kwa Chiaoer said helplessly, "Our cultivation is only at the early stage of foundation establishment. We can only go this far by using the water-splitting art. This water-splitting art is not the 5 elements escape art. We can't go freely in the sea. If we can cultivate to the middle stage of foundation establishment, we will be able to see the beautiful scenery in the abyss." "Oh, I see." Shui released her divine sense. Unfortunately, she could see Xiao Hua and Kwa rhyming, but she couldn't see the beautiful sea beast mentioned by Kwa Chiaoer. Shui was a little disappointed and looked at Xiao Hua with envy. She followed Kwa Chiaoer to play among the corals. Xiao Hua was like Shui, his eyes lit up and he was very curious. Kwa rhyming didn't explain to Xiao Hua that Kwa Chiaoer was clever, he just kept diving. Using the water-dispelling art was different from using the earth escape art. When it reached a certain level, it would immediately generate strength. Xiao Hua didn't notice it at all. He followed Kwa rhyming deeper into the cave. When Kwa rhyming stopped, Xiao Hua scanned with his divine sense and smiled. "Fellow Daoist Kwa, you don't seem to be here, right?" "Yes, the tiger mark amber is still down there." Kwa rhyming pointed at the place several feet below and said, "My cultivation can only go this far. If I want to catch the tiger mark amber, I will need to use a magic tool." After saying that, Kwa rhyming clapped his hand and a 1-foot-long magic tool that looked like a ship's anchor flew out of his storage pouch. It slowly sank down until it reached a pitch-black hole that was several feet in size and a few square feet in size. "Hehe, so you are waiting for me." Xiao Hua laughed secretly. Just as he was about to say something, his heart moved and he was about to release his divine sense. "Senior Xiao," Kwa rhyming said, "don't release your divine sense. The tiger mark amber is very sensitive to divine sense and magic power." Xiao Hua nodded slightly, his gaze fixed on the pitch-black square hole. His black iron needle was released along with his Buddhist sense. After half an hour, the seawater at the entrance of the cave swayed slightly, and a square-headed, pig-like sea beast poked its head out. However, as soon as the sea beast poked its head out, it immediately shrank back, as if it was frightened. After a few times, the sea beast came out of the hole. "Good. What a strange sea beast." When the tiger spot who completely came out, Xiao Hua was stunned. He saw that the tiger spot whose whole body was yellow. It really looked like a tiger spot. The square pig head was connected to a few ball-like bodies. Finally, there was a triangular tail. Under that ball-like body, there were a few baby claws. Kwa rhyming's magic weapon didn't stop at the entrance of the cave. It was half a foot away from the entrance. The tiger swam out of the cave. While its body was still, its head spun a few times as if its head was separated from its body. Immediately after, the tiger leopard swayed its tail and swam towards the coral on the reef. Kwa rhyming's magical artifact was guarding that direction. Seeing that the tiger leopard was close to the magical artifact, Kwa rhyming was overjoyed. In these dozens of days, the tiger leopard had never been so close to the magical artifact. However, when he activated the magical artifact, a trace of magical power surged on the magical artifact. The tiger leopard's body didn't change direction at all. A water arrow like the water of heaven and earth sprayed on the magical artifact. Kwa rhyming's body slightly stagnated and his true essence also stopped. The tiger leopard's body suddenly retreated and rushed into the black hole faster than the flying sword. At this moment, suddenly, a black light appeared in front of the black hole. It was the black iron needle that Xiao Hua released before. The tiger leopard couldn't dodge in time and was pierced by the black iron needle like a candid whore. Half of his body rushed into the black hole before he finally stopped. Kwa rhyming gasped. He knew that although the tiger leopard looked very clumsy, it was actually very clever. Moreover, its square head was very hard. Even his magical artifact couldn't break its head. However, Xiao Hua's black iron needle pierced the tiger leopard's head. On one hand, the tiger leopard's speed was too fast. On the other hand, the black iron needle was really sharp. Seeing that the black iron needle was effective, Xiao Hua dove down several feet and easily arrived at the side of the black hole. He waved his hand and the tiger leopard fell into his hand. Sure enough, The tiger leopard's skin was very hard and cold. It was far from the soft skin that he saw. "This is for you." Xiao Hua handed the tiger leopard to Kwa Rhyming and said, "The rest is mine." "Thank you, Senior Xiao." When Kwa Rhyming saw that Xiao Hua was able to easily dive down, he knew that Xiao Hua's cultivation was deeper than his own. After Kwa Rhyming received the tiger leopard, he said, "Then let's do what we did just now. Junior will put the magical artifact there to lure the tiger leopard. Senior, use the magical artifact to kill it." "Okay." Xiao Hua nodded and still put the black iron needle between the corals. After a while, no more tiger leopard came out. Xiao Hua asked, "Fellow Daoist Kwa, I have something to ask." "Senior." Kwa Rhyming smiled apologetically and said, "Junior has already said that the tiger leopard is very smart. Junior doesn't know where their nest is. Junior only knows that they often come out from this hole. Just now, after the tiger leopard disappeared, I'm afraid another tiger leopard will appear after an hour." "Oh, that's not what I'm asking." Xiao Hua shook his head and said, "I heard from Kwa Chiaoer that the tiger leopard's inner core is necessary to refine the ridge pellet, right?" "Yes." Kwa Rhyming nodded and said, "Junior doesn't know the formula of the ridge pellet, but Junior knows that the ridge pellet is refined from the inner cores of several kinds of sea beasts. Although the tiger leopard's inner core is very little, without its inner core, the ridge pellet can't be refined successfully." Xiao Hua nodded, but he still didn't understand. Since the tiger leopard has an inner core, it should be at least a 5th stage sea beast, right? Why is its strength so weak? 5th stage sea beast. Kwa Rhyming stared blankly and said curiously, "The tiger leopard isn't a 5th stage sea beast. It can barely be considered a 2nd stage sea beast." "No way." Xiao Hua was stunned. How can a 2nd stage sea beast have an inner core? How can a 2nd stage sea beast not have an inner core? Kwa Rhyming was even more baffled. Even if it's a 1st stage sea beast, it also has an inner core, right? Otherwise, what can the islands of my Gui He Sea use to refine pills? Fellow Daoist Kwa, you're saying that all sea beasts have inner cores? Xiao Hua patted his forehead and suddenly understood. Yes. Kwa Rhyming nodded. Apart from ordinary fish, shrimps, and ordinary sea beasts that don't have inner cores, all the sea beasts that we cultivators hunt have inner cores. Otherwise, why would we hunt them? Hihi, I understand now. Xiao Hua said with a smile, "I thought that sea beasts were the same as the demonic beasts on Xiaoyu continent. Only after reaching the 5th stage can they have a demonic core and the strength of a golden core cultivator. Is that so? The demonic beasts on the continent are so strange." Kwa Rhyming was also a little surprised. "I rarely go to the land. This time, I went to the Haoming City with my junior sister and lost a lot of spirit stones at the auction in the Haoming City, so I don't know much about the situation on the land." "Hey, what's going on?" Xiao Hua was stunned. After Kwa Rhyming explained the matter, Xiao Hua laughed involuntarily. Sure enough, it was not far from what he thought. It turned out that Kwa Chiaoer was the one who took out the jade slip with the demonic language to bid. She wanted to bait him or let him take more spirit stones to vent his anger. Who would have thought that Xiao Hua would suddenly stop and let Kwa Chiaoer bid for her own jade slip? Haoming City didn't care who bid for it. Although it was her own item, she still had to give a certain percentage of the commission. Kwa Chiaoer tried to be clever but ended up with a loss of spirit stones instead. "Ha ha ha!" Xiao Hua laughed, but then frowned and said, "Right, why didn't you all take these inner cores to bid?" "Hehe, Senior Xiao, do you think we are unwilling?" Kwa Rhyming smiled and said, "Unfortunately, the elixirs of the Dawn Rain continent seem to be different from those of the overseas islands. Moreover, most of the cultivators on the Dawn Rain continent have an earth attribute physique, while most of the sea beasts in the Gui He Sea have water attribute inner cores. Who would want more? Besides, the elixir recipes of the Gui He Sea islands are rare, and each island treasures them like their own lives. They have never been leaked, so how could there be such elixir recipes on the Dawn Rain continent? Then, who would want the inner cores? I'm afraid that's not all." Xiao Hua smiled as if he had thought of something. "Yes, in addition, the elixir refined from the sea beast's inner cores is very violent. Only the disciples of the overseas islands with tough meridians and solid bodies can take it. Ordinary cultivators on the Dawn Rain continent can't take it, so the elixir refined from spiritual herbs is more gentle and suitable for them. Kwa Rhyming said with some jealousy, the disciples of the overseas islands also want to take that kind of elixir. Not only is its medicinal effect good, but it also has no impurities, unlike the spine pearlin elixir, which requires the use of cultivation techniques to refine its impurity. Alas, it's a pity that the elixir refined from spiritual herbs is too expensive. Each elixir costs a lot of spiritual stones. We can't afford it. Hee hee. Seeing Kwa Rhyming start to complain, Xiao Hua smiled but didn't say anything. Actually, the inner cores of the sea beasts might be different from the golden cores of us cultivators. Kwa Rhyming said again, from what this junior knows, all the sea beasts with spiritual abilities have their inner cores. They use their inner cores to absorb the essence of heaven and earth. Sometimes, on the Guihi Sea, on the night of the full moon, many sea beasts with profound cultivation will release their inner cores to absorb the essence of the moon. The power of their inner cores can fill the entire sea surface. Therefore, the sea beasts of the Guihi Sea are the same as the spiritual herbs on the Dawn Rain continent. The more profound their cultivation and the longer their lifespan, the more useful they are to us cultivators. Xiao Hua's expression changed. He raised his index finger to signal Kwa Rhyming to be quiet. Impossible, right? Kwa Rhyming was slightly stunned. He didn't dare to release his spiritual sense, but based on what he saw, the two of them talked for less than an hour. How could the tiger-spotted amber appear? However, when he looked at the entrance of the cave with some dissatisfaction, sure enough, an even bigger square head and big ears poked out. -8. Chapter 2155. With Xiao Hua's Buddhist awareness and the black iron needles without mana fluctuations, Xiao Hua and Kwa Rhyming were able to capture the tiger spot amber with ease. In just half a day, they had already obtained 9 tiger spot amber. In front of Kwa Rhyming's dumbfounded eyes, Xiao Hua even gave him a second tiger spot amber. Xiao Hua seemed to be addicted to it. He released his Buddhist sense to check if there were any more tiger mark amber coming out. At this moment, Xiao Hua's heart suddenly jumped. A feeling of palpitations came from the depths of Great Flag Reef, pressing down on his heart tightly like a mountain. Ah! Xiao Hua was shocked. This kind of warning sign was very serious. Although he didn't know what was going to happen, he knew that the most important thing right now was to leave this place. However, just as Xiao Hua was about to speak, a fiery red color gradually appeared from the depths of Great Flag Reef. Ah! Fire wave fish beast! Kwa Rhyming's eyes immediately opened wider than a ball. His face was full of surprise and ecstasy. This is the legendary sea beast. Fellow Daoist Kwa, Xiao Hua said hurriedly. This place is extremely dangerous. Quickly follow me. Ah! Dangerous? Kwa Rhyming was stunned. He quickly scanned with his divine sense but didn't see anything abnormal. He said disapprovingly, Senior Xiao, if we talk about cultivation, I can't catch up to you. But if we talk about experience in Kuhei Sea, you should listen to me. Good boy tilde spirit minute beast, Chi Yang Kang. As Kwa Rhyming spoke, he no longer paid attention to Xiao Hua. Instead, he used his divine sense to look at the dozen or so multicolored sea beasts that had spread out in all directions and were rapidly swimming away. He muttered, These are all rare beasts that I can't even see normally. As he said that, Kwa Rhyming activated his magic tool. The ship anchor flashed with a blue brilliance and flew towards a spirit minute beast that was approaching. Fellow Daoist Kwa, this is the last time I ask you. Don't forget that you can't even see a single one of these rare sea beasts normally. Why are they all out now? Xiao Hua formed a water-dispelling seal and his body began to sway. Unexpectedly, Kwa Rhyming's eyes lit up. He simply turned a deaf ear to Xiao Hua's reminder. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent and quickly flew towards the surface of the sea. Wife. Xiao Hua released his divine sense. He had long since seen Shue, who was lingering around the corals, forgetting to return. He hurriedly said, Let's go. All right. When Shue heard Xiao Hua's call, She immediately activated her magic power and flew towards the surface of the sea. Of course, she didn't forget to shout, "Fellow Daoist Kwa, quickly follow me," but Kwa Xiao's body moved slightly. She still hesitated and said anxiously, "Where's my brother Ming?" Xiao Hua has already passed by Kwa Xiao, grabbed Xue Xue and said anxiously, "I feel that there might be some unusual movement in the Sea of Life. I already warned fellow Daoist Kwa, but he wants to capture some rare sea beast." Kwa Xiao quickly scanned with her divine perception. Indeed, she saw even more rare sea beasts surging out. Her eyes also lit up. "Praise fellow Daoist." Xue Xue knew Xiao Hua's premonition. Although her body had already flown several meters with Xiao Hua, she still didn't forget to shout, "Let's go. If we don't go now, it'll be too late." "Oh." Kwa Xiao casually responded. She waved her hand and a light purple rope flew out. It was caught by Xue Xue. At the same time Kwa Xiao flew up, she hurriedly transmitted her voice, "Brother Ming, let's go, roar." At this moment, a sound similar to the roar of tens of thousands of bulls rose from under everyone's feet. The entire sea water seemed to be boiling, and countless bubbles gushed out from the depths of the sea. Along with those bubbles, an extremely powerful confining force covered an area of more than 1,000 meters. "Ah!" Xue Xue was greatly alarmed. The magic power in her body had already begun to stagnate. Whatever water dispelling art, whatever flying technique, they all slowed down. "Rise tilde Xiao Hua roared. The phoenix body flew out of his body. With a phoenix cry, its fleshy wings flapped and shattered the confining force. However, this confining force seemed to be the might of heaven. Just as it was shattered by the phoenix body, it immediately gradually reappeared. And taking advantage of this opportunity, the magic power on the surface of Xiao Hua's body surged. With a burst of brilliance, he used the bright thunder escape and flew towards the horizon with extreme speed. Roar tilde just as Xiao Hua flew for more than 1,000 meters, the confining force suddenly disappeared again. What followed was actually an incomparably powerful suction force, a suction force that spun towards the bottom of Guehe Sea. Rumble. Another deafening sound rang out. The majestic Great Flag Reef just now was still multicolored coral rocks, but now it was like a withered branch swallowed by a flood. It was instantly destroyed, and even the suction force rapidly sank. The seawater within 1,000 meters of Guehe Sea rushed towards the bottom of the sea like a funnel. It was as if the entire seabed had leaked a large hole here. Brother Ming tilde 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 Kwa Xiao screamed miserably. The hand holding the light purple rope actually loosened. Her small and delicate body instantly fell into the whirlpool. She simply didn't have time to struggle and was about to be swallowed. "Do you want to die?" Xiao Hua roared angrily. The phoenix Dharma body turned around and flew over. Its sharp phoenix claws instantly broke through Kwa Xiao's defense and pierced into Kwa Xiao's back, firmly grabbing her. "Senior Xiao, quickly put me down." Kwa Xiao screamed somewhat crazily. "I want to find Brother Ming. I want to die together with Brother Ming. What's the point of this?" Xiao Hua was somewhat speechless. At this moment, he had already brought Xue Xue to the edge of the whirlpool. The suction force was already relatively weak, and Xue Xue was able to resist it. "Even if I die, I want to be together with Brother Ming. Even if I die, I want to tell him that I love him." Kwa Xiao struggled with all her might, but how could she break free from the phoenix Dharma body? Her petite body was brought to Xiao Hua's side. Her Daoist robe was already soaked in blood. When Xue Xue heard this, she was about to cry. She turned to Xiao Hua and said, "Husband, I know you can save Kwa Rhyming. Put me and Kwa Xiao down, and I will immediately take Kwa Xiao and escape from here. I don't want to see this pair of unfortunate mandarin ducks separated from each other." This. Xiao Hua released his divine sense. At this moment, the entire whirlpool was already enveloped by a huge suction force. Under the might of heaven and earth, his divine sense couldn't reach far. However, he could still see Kwa Rhyming struggling with all his might in the whirlpool, being dragged into the abyss bit by bit. After estimating for a moment, Xiao Hua understood that he should be able to save Kwa Rhyming. However, this whirlpool and the collapsed Great Flag Reef were obviously the might of heaven and earth. Which cultivator could say that they could escape unscathed under the might of heaven and earth? However, Kwa Chiao-er's extremely desolate gaze, incomparably desperate expression, and resolute actions all hit Xiao Hua's weak spot. -8. Chapter 2156. Forget it. Xiao Hua clenched his teeth and grabbed Kwa Chiao-er. He threw her to Xue Xue and said, "Fly horizontally as soon as possible." Then, he turned around and rushed into the whirlpool. But at this moment, there was another loud roar. The tremors were several times stronger than before. Countless bubbles surged out from the bottom of the sea, and countless corpses of sea beasts were tossed out by the whirlpool. In fact, Great Flag Reef was collapsing at an even faster rate. The suction force of the sea was several times stronger. Withdraw Xiao Hua dived quickly, and his spirit was released at the same time. Xiao Hua, who had always been stingy and greedy, didn't forget to amass wealth even when his life was in danger. Fortunately, as the corpses of the sea beasts around Xiao Hua disappeared, Xiao Hua's speed didn't decrease. It even exceeded the suction force and approached Kwa Rhyming at an extremely fast speed. Kwa Rhyming's face was already pale. He could still use the magic power in his body and make a dying struggle. Just as Xiao Hua turned around, the suction force increased greatly. He was in the center of the whirlpool, and the suction force increased greatly. His true essence was now imprisoned, and he couldn't use any magic power. He could only be helpless. He fell into the whirlpool, and his whole body was not only spinning like a top, but also being dragged by the whirlpool at an extremely fast speed. There was no need to mention Kwa Rhyming's mood. He was extremely depressed and regretful. In his mind, besides Xiao Hua's warning before he left, there was only Kwa Chiao-er's smile. His mood was very similar to Kwa Chiao-er's. He was extremely regretful that he didn't say anything to Kwa Chiao-er. "Hey, Chiao-er." Just as Kwa Rhyming felt that the spinning sky and sea were extremely dark and was about to close his eyes, a figure appeared in front of him. When he thought that his eyes were playing tricks on him, when he opened his eyes again, the figure was already close to him. However, it wasn't Kwa Chiao-er, but Xiao Hua, Senior Xiao. Kwa Rhyming was completely stunned. He was even more stunned than Kwa Chiao-er. Unfortunately, Kwa Rhyming could only think with his head, but he couldn't move his hands and feet. He didn't have any magic power, so he could only watch with his eyes wide open. Just at this moment, a gust of wind was born from the center of the whirlpool. It went against the torrential seawater and rushed into the air. Following this gust of wind, the range of the whirlpool suddenly increased, and the suction force also suddenly increased. Oh no! Xiao Hua was shocked. The pressure on him had increased as well, and he had no choice but to release the Phoenix technique. Moreover, he was extremely worried about Xue Xue, but at that moment, the strong winds and the suction force seemed to be able to absorb his spiritual will. Xiao Hua's spiritual will was unable to reach far. How could he meet Xue Xue? Forget it. Xiao Hua gritted his teeth and stimulated his magic energy once more, causing his figure to flash once more as he flashed towards the center of the vortex where the suction force was the strongest. Crack! Just as Kwa Rhyming's body was about to sway, the Phoenix Dharma body extended its sharp claws and grabbed Kwa Rhyming's back. Oh my, this guy's physical body is a little strange. When the Phoenix celestial body's sharp claws pierced into Kwa Rhyming's flesh, Xiao Hua immediately felt something strange about Kwa Rhyming's flesh. It was incomparably tough, and if it wasn't for the Phoenix celestial body's continuous advancement, this claw might not have succeeded. This was a situation where Kwa Rhyming didn't have the slightest bit of magic energy. However, even though Xiao Hua had caught Kwa Rhyming, he had also fallen into a quagmire. This strong suction force had already enveloped the surroundings of the vortex, and the force was getting stronger and stronger. Xiao Hua's own true essence was also condensed, and his magic energy was gradually unable to be used. Seeing his body being dragged into the vortex, his entire body also began to involuntarily spin. While Xiao Hua was inwardly complaining, his mind was also rapidly turning. Xiao Hua had already experienced this spinning vortex many times in the Dark Netherland, so he could be considered to have some experience. Therefore, he didn't struggle upwards, and only urged his limited magic energy to fly parallel to the direction of the vortex. After flying for a cup of tea's worth of time, although Xiao Hua didn't escape from the vortex and fell down a lot, Xiao Hua had already gradually flown out of the center of the vortex, and his escape was in sight. Wong tilde tilde tilde, a buzzing sound, as if millions of flies were flying around Xiao Hua's ears, shook his entire head. At this time, his magic energy was also completely disordered, and he was simply unable to continue flying. Sure, in just a moment when Xiao Hua relaxed his strength, the entire vortex was like a huge mouth swallowing the entire sea, the Great Flag Reef, and many of the remains of the sea beasts that Xiao Hua didn't put into his space. Xiao Hua and Qua Ryming's bodies also fell down by several tens of feet. Damn it! I'm going to die. Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed, and his mind became slightly clearer as he immediately urged his cultivation method, and the earth crystal yarrow milk in his meridians was activated. Soon after, a rich earth-type spiritual energy of heaven and earth flooded Xiao Hua's meridians, and some of it overflowed from the surface of his body. Go! Xiao Hua's spirit was once again shaken. On one hand, he turned the spiritual energy of heaven and earth into flowing true essence to urge his magic energy, and on the other hand, he used all his strength to urge the bright thunder escape to rush out of the vortex. He also didn't forget to continue putting the remains of the sea beasts in the vortex into his space. It would be a waste if he didn't take them. Inside the vortex, all kinds of noises were unceasingly heard, and it was really lively. However, the suction force and the sweeping gale were similar to the dark wind, and gradually expanded, sucking in the several hundreds of feet of sea water. Moreover, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in this area was sucked in by the gale, forming a huge funnel that directly pierced into the sky. It was as if the end of the funnel was the layers of white clouds in the sky, and those white clouds were also drawn into the vortex. The Great Flag Reef that was originally in this sea area had long disappeared. In its place was a vortex that looked like the mouth of a pitch-black beast. This vortex was very deep, and there was simply no bottom. Everything within several hundreds of feet couldn't escape this vortex, and was completely swallowed by this vortex. Xiao Hua urged so much magic energy, and it was almost the same as when he was risking his life in the ink-black forest. On one hand, he skillfully corrected his body, and on the other, he urged his magic energy, and the earth-yellow brilliance around his body repeatedly flashed. In addition, about a foot behind his upper body, the phoenix celestial body flapped its wings to resist the restrictive force, and its sharp claws even grabbed a sturdy man that looked like a diamond. Gggg tilde tilde tilde. The sound inside the vortex changed again. This time, it was as if a giant was pushing a stone door, and there was the rusty sound of the door's axle moving. Following this sound, the hurricane that stood erect in the sky suddenly slapped down, and this situation was simply a replica of the dark wind. A wave of vast and unparalleled power from the outermost part of the vortex, from the top of the vortex, suddenly began to shrink. Everything in this area, including the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, was wrapped up, and suddenly restrained. Raw. Xiao Hua was very anxious, and he used the dragon transformation art with all his strength. His meridians were agitated, and his true essence instantly multiplied. Moreover, for safety's sake, Xiao Hua spat out another mouthful of blood, and he had no choice but to use the reverse blood-devouring art. The bright thunder escape changed direction again, and directly rushed out of the vortex. Xiao Hua's whole body flashed with brilliance, and his speed instantly increased by half, just barely surpassing the enormous power of the vortex. At the final moment when the vortex was rapidly shrinking, he rushed out of the vortex. Like a wild horse out of control, Xiao Hua's speed suddenly rushed into the still surging Kuehe Sea. That speed had already broken through the water-dispelling art, and Xiao Hua's whole body entered the sea water. That ice-cold sea water at this time made Xiao Hua feel so familiar. At this time, Xiao Hua's meridians were already flowing with true essence, and abundant magic power filled his whole body. Xiao Hua naturally knew that using the reverse blood-devouring art would damage his cultivation. With a sigh, he let go of Qua Ryming, and the phoenix body returned to his body. He used the water-dispelling art again, and said indifferently, "Let's go up." "Yes, I will listen to Senior's instructions." At this time, Kwa rhyming was extremely respectful. This vortex was formed by heaven and earth, and the might of heaven and earth was something that only spirit-severing cultivators could resist. And Xiao Hua was actually able to escape from the vortex and save him. Husband. Brother Ming tilde. Without waiting for the two to fly far, divine senses had already swept over. Xue Xue and Kwa Qiao shouted at the same time, and rushed over from the distance. Although Xue Xue's face was filled with surprise, but it was obviously not out of her expectations. I am injured. Take me and fly. Xiao Hua unceremoniously leaned on Xue Xue's shoulder and hugged Xue Xue's small waist. Xue Xue's mouth curved into a smile, and she nodded, okay. Saying that, Xue Xue hugged Xiao Hua's small waist and flew out of the gooey he sea. When Kwa rhyming saw that Kwa Qiao's robe was stained with blood, he did not care about anything else, and hurriedly grabbed her hand and asked, Qiao, your injury. If it was another day, Kwa rhyming might not dare to do this, and Kwa Qiao would definitely be shy, or even slightly angry. However, Kwa rhyming had gone through life and death, so he did not care about anything else. Kwa Qiao also slightly twitched, and then sadness came from her heart. The corner of her mouth opened, and she cried, and threw herself into Kwa rhyming's arms, tears flowing down. Qiao, Qiao. Kwa rhyming was stunned, like a clay statue. At this time, he realized that his behavior was inappropriate, but Kwa Qiao gave him an even greater impact. For a moment, he was at a loss. It was still Kwa Qiao. She raised her hand, took Kwa rhyming's fan-like hand, and placed it on her shoulder. Kwa rhyming's hand trembled, and after a moment, as if he was blessed by luck, he trembled and touched Kwa Qiao's beautiful hair. However, he only touched it slightly, and immediately retracted his hand as if it was burned by fire. Then, he hesitated for a moment, and firmly stroked Kwa Qiao's black hair. Qiao. Kwa rhyming's voice was trembling. Your injury, is it serious? Is it a problem? I have healing pills here. You should take it according to your feelings. Kwa Qiao shook her head vigorously in Kwa rhyming's arms, and her tears and snot rubbed on Kwa rhyming's body. Oh. After a moment, Kwa rhyming was still not at ease, and asked again, how did you get injured? Did you hit a reef? Kwa Qiao almost wanted to stomp her feet. She did not want to leave Kwa rhyming's warm embrace, as if it was incomparably safe and tranquil there. However, she felt sweet in her heart, knowing that if she did not answer, Kwa rhyming's heart would not be at ease. -8. Chapter 2157. It's nothing. When Senior Xiao saved me, he used his avatar to scratch me. Weren't you also caught? Kwa Qiao opened her mouth and took a breath of air. She said with a choked voice, Sister Xue already gave me a pill. It's just that I didn't have time to change my daoist robe. Oh tilde Kwa rhyming nodded. His heart was finally at ease. He knew that Xiao Hua's phoenix avatar's sharp claws were very powerful. His heart was also slightly distressed for Kwa Qiao. Xiao Hua and Xue Xue flew into the air and watched the gradually shrinking whirlpool. They still couldn't use their divine sense to probe inside. Good girl. Xiao Hua sniffed the fragrance of Xue Xue's body and said, why is your husband's luck so bad? Wherever I go, there will be problems. This kind of heaven and earth anomaly happened in such a vast and boundless Kuhei Sea. Why did I have to encounter it? If you say I encountered it, then I encountered it. I could have run away by myself. But my wife's kindness was aroused and insisted that your husband go save them. My wife, how can you be so ruthless? Aren't you afraid that your husband will be in danger? Hee hee. Xue Xue pursed her lips and said with a smile, I naturally know that you won't be in any danger. That's why I let you go. Ah! My wife, you have the ability to foresee the future. How come I never knew about it? Xiao Hua laughed and said indifferently. However, a trace of gloominess appeared on Xue Xue's face. However, she forced a smile and said, that's right. My husband can do it on a whim. How can I foresee the future? All right, this Kwa rhyming was brought back by this young man. How will my wife reward this young man? Xiao Hua said as his nose gently rubbed against Xue Xue's snow-white neck. All right tilde Xue Xue's face flushed red and said, Kwa Chao and Kwa rhyming are coming up soon. Don't let them laugh at us. TSK tilde if these two people continue to chatter, let's see if my husband doesn't throw them into the whirlpool together. Xiao Hua muttered in a low voice. However, just as he was about to dawdle, Kwa rhyming held Kwa Chao's hand and flew up from the Kuhei Sea. Kwa rhyming looked a little embarrassed, while Kwa Chao was natural and unrestrained. She did not seem to be shy at all. Junior thanks Senior Xiao for saving my life again. Kwa Chao and Kwa rhyming bowed to pay their respects. At this moment, Kwa Chao was sincerely convinced by Xiao Hua. This cultivator is truly resourceful and noble. He, get up. Xiao Hua also couldn't stay on Xue Xue's body. He straightened up and waved his hand. This is my wife's order. If you want to thank someone, you should thank her. Naturally, the two of them bowed to Xue Xue. Xue Xue immediately supported the two of them. She blinked her eyes and said, since you've been through life and death, I hope that the two of you can connect with each other and cultivate together. Kwa rhyming was a little embarrassed, but Kwa Chao nodded and said seriously, I will remember Sister Xue's word. Oh, although it was my wife's orders, you still have to thank me. Xiao Hua interrupted again. Yes, as long as I have it or Brother Ming can take it out, we will definitely thank Senior Xiao. Kwa Chao said without hesitation. Great. Xiao Hua praised in his heart, the last devil spear shaft won't run away. However, since Xiao Hua knew that there was no devil spear shaft in Kwa Chao's storage pouch, he didn't say anything. He smiled and said, since fellow Kwa said so, I will remember it. When I think of something and ask you for it, don't refuse. Of course. Kwa Chao nodded and said, I still have some things left on the island. When I return to Bloodred Island, I will definitely let Senior Xiao choose. In addition, if Senior Xiao needs anything, don't hesitate to tell me. If Brother Ming and I can do it, we will definitely do our best. Oh, right, fellow Kwa, your body seems to be very tough. Could it be that you have a secret technique? Xiao Hua's eyes turned, and he thought of something and asked. Senior, this is the secret technique of my Bloodred Island. Kwa rhyming nodded and said, I have practiced it since I was young. Secret technique of body refinement. Xiao Hua's heart moved, and he immediately connected with Kwa Chao's strength. He turned his head and said, fellow Kwa, have you practiced it before? Yes. Kwa Chao nodded without hesitation and said, this is the rule of my Bloodred Island. All disciples have to practice it when they are young. However, after they grow up, it depends on their aptitude. Most of the female disciples give up, and only 30% of the male disciples can continue to practice it. Brother Ming is one of them. Hearing this, Xiao Hua couldn't help but feel happy. He rolled his eyes and said with a smile, this secret technique. I probably can't see it, right? Kwa rhyming's face showed that he was in a difficult position, while Kwa Chao said naturally, it is as Senior Xiao said. This is the secret technique of my Bloodred Island. Outsiders can't see it, and we have already made a blood oath. Yes. Xiao Hua nodded. Kwa Chao said with a smile, however, Senior Xiao has the complete technique of my Bloodred Island. If you want to exchange it with that technique, there will be no problem. Kwa rhyming looked at Kwa Chao with a puzzled expression, and Kwa Chao didn't explain. Yes, that's right. Xiao Hua nodded and said with a wave of his hand, I just suffered a little injury and need to rest for a few days. Is there a place for me to rest? Can you two fellow Taoists lead me there? Senior, please follow me. Kwa Chao nodded and used her divine sense to scan the Great Flag Reef, which had disappeared without a trace. She flew up and flew towards the sunset. After more than 20 days, above the boundless sea, a blood-red color was painted on the horizon. Corresponding to the blood-red color, the Sea of Union was also blood-red. Moreover, there was a particularly bright spot amidst this blood-red color. When they flew closer, they could clearly see that it was an island that was connected together. On the island, blood-red plants covered the ground, and the rocks and soil on the island were also blood-red. It was very strange. Senior Xiao, this is my home. Kwa Chao said and pointed. However, when her hand reached for Kwa rhyming's hand flashed. It was as if he was afraid of being seen by the other disciples of Blood Red Island. Kwa Chiao glared at Kwa Rhyming, and this guy obediently stretched out his hand, allowing Kwa Chiao to grab his carrot-sized finger. Xiao Hua stroked his chin and looked at the island about 100 li away. After thinking for a while, he released his divine sense and rushed towards Blood Red Island. Oh! Kwa Chiao obviously sensed Xiao Hua's divine sense and was slightly stunned. Soon after, she understood what Xiao Hua was thinking. Sure enough, after a while, the same divine sense swept out from Blood Red Island, circled around Xiao Hua and the others, and locked onto Xiao Hua. -8. Chapter 2158. The master of your island is about to step into the middle stage of gold core? Xiao Hua said thoughtfully. Now Kwa Chiao no longer doubted Xiao Hua's cultivation. She also sensed the island master's cultivation and respectfully replied, Senior Xiao, please no. The island master's name is Kwa Heng. He is an early gold core stage cultivator. I'm afraid his cultivation is similar to Senior Xiao's. Hearing Kwa Chiao's probing, Xiao Hua smiled and didn't reply. His cultivation was still at the early stage of foundation establishment. After flying forward for a while, an early-stage gold core cultivator led several late-stage foundation establishment cultivators to welcome them. When Xiao Hua saw these cultivators, he couldn't help but be stunned. When he saw Kwa Rhyming, he already felt that this guy was tall like a giant ape. However, compared to these masters, Kwa Rhyming was simply a small ape. The gold core cultivator in front of him was more than 10 feet tall. Moreover, he had big shoulders and a round waist. His body was incomparably sturdy. This was the appearance of Xiao Hua's mighty Vajra Dharma body, and Kwa Rhyming was almost 2 heads shorter than this gold core cultivator. Looking at the late-stage foundation establishment cultivators near the gold core cultivator, they were also sturdy. However, they were still one size smaller than Kwa Heng. Of course, they were still one size bigger than Kwa Rhyming. Damn it! Xiao Hua was immediately overjoyed. The disciples of Blood Red Island don't need to compete at all. They just need to stand there and compare their height to see who is stronger. Kwa Heng's divine sense swept over Xiao Hua and his brows slightly wrinkled. He saw a cultivator's divine sense rashly sweep in and immediately checked. Only then did he realize that there was a cultivator 100 li away accompanied by Blood Red Island's disciples. He understood that this should be a gold core cultivator visiting Blood Red Island, so he brought the main disciples of Blood Red Island to welcome him. However, Kwa Heng unexpectedly discovered that Xiao Hua's cultivation was only at the early stage of foundation establishment. How could he not frown? It wasn't that he didn't know that Dawn Rain Continent had a mysterious technique to conceal one's cultivation, but it couldn't directly conceal one's cultivation from gold core to foundation establishment, right? He could believe it if it was from nascent soul or divine clone to foundation establishment, but he himself was a gold core cultivator. Of course, he knew how difficult it was. I, disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, Xiao Hua, greets Island Master Kwa Heng. Xiao Hua stepped forward and saluted. He didn't use the identity of a junior. Shue Shue smiled and bowed. Junior Shue Shue of the Imperial Thunder Sect greets Senior Kwa. He, so it's a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. No disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect has ever visited my Blood Red Island. Your presence brings light to my humble dwelling. Kwa Heng no longer hesitated in his heart. He hurriedly stepped forward to return the greeting and said with a smile, Hehe, Island Master, you're too courteous. Xiao Hua smiled and said, I accompanied Junior Sister to the Kuhei Sea to gain experience. Not only did Junior Sister successfully reach foundation establishment overseas, she even encountered 2 extremely outstanding disciples from your island. This Xiao is very happy. I heard from your island's disciple that Blood Ray Island is holding a competition that is held once every 10 years. This Xiao feels that it is fate, so I came to nag you. How presumptuous. Ha 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 tilde congratulations, fellow Daoist Shue. Kwa Heng was a gold core cultivator. He had already seen that Shue Shue's realm had just stabilized. He also heard that Xiao Hua didn't hide anything and even praised his disciple. He was happy in his heart. He clapped his hands and took out a jade bottle. He handed it over and said with a smile, "This is my Blood Red Island's Foundation Establishment medicinal pill. It can't be compared to the Imperial Thunder sects, but it is also a little bit of my appreciation." Shwe generously received it and "Thank you for the medicine, Senior." This junior has always been curious about the spiritual medicines of the overseas islands. Senior has satisfied this junior's wish. No need to thank me, no need to thank me." Kwa Hang waved his hand and introduced several people around him to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua also didn't neglect and cupped his hands to return the greeting. These late-stage Foundation establishment cultivators didn't understand as well as Kwa Hang. Although they also bowed, they all addressed each other as equals. Xiao Hua didn't care. After all, he really was a middle-stage Foundation establishment cultivator. When Kwa Hang saw this, he didn't reprimand them. He only smiled and watched. After Xiao Hua finished greeting, Kwa Rhyming and Kwa Chiao came forward to report. Hearing that Kwa Chiao actually asked Xiao Hua to be her helper, Kwa Hang smiled. "You little girl, if fellow Daoist Xiao is your helper, other people still want to compete with you like this?" Immediately after, he pondered for a moment and said with a smile, "Since fellow Daoist Xiao wants to see the competition of my Blood Red Island and is still so enthusiastic, I can't not help but fulfill his wish. Moreover, now that we've reached the final stage of the competition, we'll simply hold the trial of the island tomorrow. All disciples will participate." "Ayo, Island Lord," Kwa Chiao said in panic, "Senior Xiao only has profound magic power. His physical body isn't necessarily tough. For him to participate in the entire trial of the island, I'm afraid, it's not suitable, right?" Kwa Rhyming seemed to have thought of something and said, "Chiao Senior Xiao should be fine." Seeing Kwa Rhyming's abnormal correction, Kwa Chiao was also slightly surprised. Fellow Daoist Xiao," Kwa Hang said with a smile, "Fellow Daoist must also know that my Blood Red Island's foundation is body refining. In this trial of the island, there are many areas that test the achievements of body refining. Other areas also test magic power. Yes, because this grand event is held once every 10 years by my Blood Red Island, the fellow Daoists of the nearby islands also like to participate. Therefore, the ancestors allowed the disciples of Blood Red Island to invite helpers. On one hand, it increases the fun, and on the other hand, it also strengthens the cooperation with other islands. Of course, if fellow Daoist Xiao participates, there's no need to talk about the magic power segment. Who can compete with you? However, if it's just magic power, fellow Daoist Xiao also feels that it's meaningless, right? Do you have to participate in all the trials? Including the body refining technique?" Looking at Kwa Hang's smile and the eager faces of the few late-stage Foundation establishment cultivators, Xiao Hua said with a smile, "All right. I also happen to know some body refining techniques. I can also compare notes with the fellow Daoists of Blood Red Island. Imperial Thunder Sect also has body refining techniques." Kwa Hang was somewhat stunned. "I've never heard of it." My Imperial Thunder Sect naturally also has body refining techniques. It's just that it's not particularly famous." Xiao Hua naturally couldn't damage the reputation of Imperial Thunder Sect, so he replied with a smile. "All right, fellow Daoist Xiao, please." Kwa Hang swung his Daoist robe. "Fellow Daoist Kwa, please go first," Xiao Hua said modestly. Immediately, several people flew towards Blood Red Island. This Blood Red Island was different from Awakening Silicon Island. There was no distinction between the main island and the auxiliary island. There was only a group of islands scattered together. These islands looked like one big island from afar, but when one looked closer, there were many cliffs, canyons, and accumulated seawater that separated these islands. Of course, the defense of Blood Red Island was even stronger than that of Awakening Silicon Island. There were many places that actually had magic power confining arrays. Everyone had no choice but to land and walk in step by step. In the evening, Kwa Hang held a banquet to entertain Xiao Hua and Shwe. Of course, apart from these two Imperial Thunder Sect disciples, there were also some disciples from the nearby islands of Blood Red Island. However, Most of these disciples were Qi refining realm cultivators, and very few of them were foundation establishment realm cultivators. During the banquet, Kua Hang was even more polite to Xiao Hua, and there was even a bit of respect in his tone. Xiao Hua understood that Kua Qiao and Kua Rhyming must have told Kua Hang about the matter of them being rescued. However, since Kua Hang didn't mention it, Xiao Hua didn't take it to heart. His road of experience was a road of sowing seeds, a road of doing good deeds, a road of fame, and a road of soaring cultivation. He could be considered to have regarded false reputation as a trivial matter. In addition, during the banquet, Xiao Hua could be considered to have seen all of Blood Red Island's foundation establishment realm and peak Qi refining realm disciples. Contrary to his expectations, there wasn't a single well-built female cultivator. All of the female disciples of Blood Red Island were as petite as Kua Qiao, looking thin and weak. This made Xiao Hua have no choice but to start thinking about the good deeds his Phoenix celestial body and Fairy Hong Xia's Ice Phoenix celestial body had done after drinking a few mouthfuls of spiritual wine. Alas, drinking more spiritual wine is indeed not a good thing. Xiao Hua and Xue Xue came to the resting place arranged by Blood Red Island and couldn't help but think. The resting place of the disciples of the overseas islands was somewhat different from that of the Dawn Rain continent. Most of them built their cave dwellings inside the stone walls, and all of them were underground. There were very few pavilions and palaces. My wife. Seeing this exquisite cave dwelling with bright red decorations, Xiao Hua became restless and said in a low voice, "Finally, it's late at night again. One night is worth several thousand spirit stones. Why don't we rest early?" Xue Xue was somewhat shy. She looked around and shook her head again. "My husband, this is obviously the place where Blood Red Island entertains guests. I don't know how many people have rested here. Wouldn't it be better if we just adjust our breathing, nourish our true origin?" "Damn it, that's right." Xiao Hua suddenly realized and hurriedly said with an apologetic smile, "Your husband was wrong." Before he could explain further, a communication talisman flew in from outside the cave dwelling. Xiao Hua pinched the communication talisman and a smile appeared on his face. He said, "My wife, go inside and adjust your breathing. Your husband has good news." Xue Xue blinked her eyes and said with a smile, "Could it be that the female disciple of Blood Red Island has taken a fancy to my husband? Why are you so impatient?" Xiao Hua said helplessly, "Of course not. It's Kua Qiao and Kua Rhyming who came. I'm afraid they have good things for your husband." TSK tilde looking at Xiao Hua's greedy appearance, Xue Xue shook her head helplessly. Don't you have enough good things? Hehe, my wife knows that there is no such thing as the most, only more. Your husband likes to have more, the more the better. Not long after, Kua Rhyming and Kua Qiao arrived together. The moment they met, Kua Qiao took out a few storage bags and said respectfully, "Senior Xiao, our lives were saved by Senior. Moreover, the tentacles of Geng Zhe and the 2 tiger spots were also given to us by Senior. Junior discussed with Brother Ming, and these storage bags were hidden by the 2 of us. Also, Junior used the opportunity of the banquet to make some transactions with Senior brothers and Senior sisters, exchanging for some rare items. These are all for Senior. Senior, please accept them as a token of my appreciation. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote for it. -8. Chapter 2159. Kua Qiao originally thought that Xiao Hua would refuse. Who knew that Xiao Hua would take it without hesitation and scan it with his divine sense? Nonsense, didn't he come to Blood Red Island just to get Kua Qiao's storage pouch? In order to gather all the demonic tools, Xiao Hua almost lost his life. Hehe, Senior Xiao is really frank. Kua Qiao didn't know what Xiao Hua was thinking and secretly praised him in her heart. Sure enough, one of the storage pouches contained many demonic tools. One of them was the demonic spear shaft that Xiao Hua wanted. The cracks and broken parts were very similar to the ones in the space. Moreover, the small demonic hammer that Kua Qiao used before was also among them. It seemed that Kua Qiao really took out all the things. Hey, what is this? Xiao Hua naturally couldn't show his attention and looked at the other storage pouch. The storage pouch was full of miscellaneous items. One of them was an ox head token. It was also mottled with rust and was very similar to the tiger head token in the space. After thinking for a moment, Xiao Hua took out the token and asked, Xiao what is this token? This. I also don't know. Seeing Xiao Hua directly call her Xiao Kwa Xiao was very happy. She glanced at Kwa rhyming and said, this thing was picked up by Martial Uncle in the early years when I was doing a foundation establishment trial on the Sea of Kuei. There were two of them. One seemed to be a pig's head. I really don't remember, so Martial Uncle casually gave me this ox head token. Which Martial Uncle? Xiao Hua said with a smile, if possible, can you also give his token to me? Oh, it's Martial Uncle Kwa Yu. Kwa Xiao answered without hesitation, but she was a bit embarrassed. I will ask Martial Uncle Kwa, but that thing is many years old. I don't know if Martial Uncle still has it. Moreover, who knows if he wants to exchange it with Senior Xiao? Xiao Hua said with a smile, you can go and ask, see what conditions he has. Okay. Kwa Xiao readily agreed and pointed her finger. Senior Xiao, the things in this storage bag are all strange things that Brother Ming and I obtained in the Qian He Sea. We don't know their uses. Even if you ask me, I don't know. Hey. As expected, it's really strange. There's actually a small finger bone here. Xiao Hua smiled and put down the storage pouch. Then, he looked at the other storage pouches. They were filled with sea beasts' inner cores, bones, and other things. There were even some spirit herbs from the sea. Thus, Xiao Hua pointed at the storage pouch that contained devil tools and asked, devil tools are extremely rare in the Dawnrain continent. Why do you have so many of them on Bloodshine Island? Hihi, I'll teach Senior Xiao well. Kwa Xiao laughed and said, seniors all cultivate Dharma spells, and this demonic artifact is extremely heavy. Without a body-tempering cultivation technique, who would use it? My Blood Ray Island uses the body refining technique as its foundation. Naturally, we need a lot of demonic artifact. Many cultivators who obtained demonic artifacts would bring them to the Sea City to trade with my Blood Ray Island. Looking at the storage pouch, Kwa Xiao was somewhat reluctant to part with it and said, since young, I've been fond of refining tools. I've dabbled in demonic artifacts. Among them, there's a mysterious demonic artifact. In my opinion, it should be the famous weapon in the demon realm, Qiu Yinliu. However, I only have a small part of it, so I can't make a complete judgment. Then, a trace of regret appeared on her face. When I went to Haoming City this time, I encountered another spear end. Unfortunately, it was snatched by another cultivator. It's really hateful. Oh, Qiu Yinliu? Xiao Hua was obviously stunned. This name was definitely unfamiliar to him before he came to the Qian He Sea. But just now, when Heavenly Demon Sect's Zhong Qingxiao wanted to escape from the 10,000 Demon Realms Empress, she made up a lie. Wasn't it to find this Qiu Yinliu? Could it be that it was this item? Is this it? There were many demonic artifacts in the storage pouch. However, only this spear shaft was left with a damaged section. Yes, Senior Xiao's eyes are indeed as sharp as torches. Kwa Xiao praised. Xiao Hua originally wanted to take another demonic artifact first and then pretend to take this damaged one as well. It could be said that he couldn't refuse but reluctantly took it. Since Kwa Xiao sincerely gave it to him, Xiao Hua didn't pretend and smiled. Since Xiao is so sincere, I'll accept it. Following which, Xiao Hua took some of the spiritual herbs from the sea as well as the storage pouch that was filled with strange things. He then passed the remaining items to Kwa Xiao. Senior. Kwa rhyming was a little anxious and said, what you took are all useless things. These are the ones that are really useful. Xiao Hua pursed his lips and smiled. With a profound expression, he looked at the two with bright eyes. Qiao and Qiao's brother Ming. Actually, what I take or don't take, isn't it your goodwill? I didn't save the two of you for your things. So what's the difference between taking more and taking less? Of course, I saw that Qiao had deep feelings for her brother Ming. Even if she didn't want her own life, she would still die with her brother Ming. This kind of deep affection, even the heavens and earth would be convinced. Why can't I take action? Although these things aren't of much use to me, I hope that the two of you can peacefully dual cultivate in the future and reach the gold core realm. Senior. Kwa Rhyming's eyes were filled with tears. Kwa Chao was grateful. They really didn't expect the person in front of them to be so noble. Senior, please wait a moment. I'll go find Martial Uncle. I'll definitely find the things that Senior want. Kwa Chao left without saying anything. Chao, don't be anxious. Xiao Hua stopped her and said, "It's already late. Let's talk about it tomorrow. I'll also stay here for a while." Okay. Kwa Chao was very obedient and asked again, "Other than that thing, what else is Senior Xiao looking for in Kwa Hisi?" "Junior wants to see what effect it has." "So it's like that." Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said, "If there are any special spirit herbs in Kwa Hisi, it doesn't matter what kind of spirit herb it is. As long as it's a seedling or even a seed, help me find it." "Okay, Junior understands." Kwa Chao thought that Xiao Hua was disrespectful and immediately patted her chest. "Remember, I don't want anything that's perennial. I only want seeds or even seedlings." Xiao Hua didn't forget to remind them. Yes, Kwa Rhyming and Kwa Chao took the storage pouch and rushed out excitedly. "Ari, I am just so noble. There's really no other way." Xiao Hua naturally knew what the two of them were thinking. He loosened his shoulders and said helplessly, "That's right, 1,000-year-old spirit herb is really useless to Xiao Hua." -8. Chapter 2160. Although the inner cores in Kwa Chao's storage pouch were not bad, they couldn't be compared to the sea beasts Xiao Hua caught in the whirlpool. Xiao Hua didn't care about spirit stones, so what could they give him? Perhaps only those strange and unknown things in the Kuei Sea would be able to do so. Xiao Hua threw the storage pouch into the space and placed the finger bone near the white bone in the space. Sure enough, they were one and had a faint lightning connection. Then, he looked at the tiger head token and the ox head token. They were similar, but they didn't have any spiritual energy fluctuations. Who knew if they were really related? As for the demonic spear shaft, Xiao Hua was most concerned about, it was real. When the fragments of the demonic spear were put together, it was really a complete demonic spear. Is this the dragon silver armor? It's actually a famous weapon in the demon world. I can't see anything strange about it. Xiao Hua pinched his chin and thought in confusion, perhaps, I can see its uniqueness after I repair it. Actually, Xiao Hua wanted to ask Kwa Chao about the refining method or her experience. However, since Kwa Chao didn't put the jade slip in the storage pouch, the refining method should be a secret of Blood Red Island. He didn't need to make things difficult for her. Moreover, if Xiao Hua asked, wouldn't his noble image be destroyed? Forget it. I know the refining method of the 5 elements, and I also have the demonic slip from the demon world. With Chao's annotations, how can it be worse than Blood Red Island? Xiao Hua clapped his hands and took out the jade slip that he had been referring to for the past few days. Early in the morning, when the sun rose, the clear light swept across Blood Red Island and dyed it red. Outside the cave where Xiao Hua and Xue Xue were resting, there were already Blood Red Island disciples waiting for them. Xiao Hua opened his eyes and scanned with his divine sense. Naturally, he couldn't let them wait for too long, so he walked out of the cave with Xue Xue. Senior Xiao. The disciple standing in wait was a qi refining cultivator. He said respectfully, "My Blood Ray Island's island test will begin in an hour. All the martial uncles and senior brothers are preparing for it, so the island master had to ask this junior to invite senior over for the test. Please forgive us, senior." No problem. Xiao Hua suddenly understood and raised his hand. "Senior Xiao, please." The attendant disciple respectfully activated the yellow talisman and led the way in front of him, flying directly to the location of the blood-colored beach that Xiao Hua had just passed when he entered the island yesterday. At this time, a lot of disciples had already gathered on the beach. Many of them were from the banquet last night. More than 10 Middle Foundation Establishment stage disciples came over to chat with Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua also responded with a smile. "Fellow Daoist Xiao, I heard that you want to exchange some things with I? Just as Xiao Hua was responding, a slightly cold voice sounded. Xiao Hua turned his head and saw a slightly tall female cultivator with slightly dark skin and faint wrinkles at the corner of her eyes. Moreover, her hair was also somewhat white as she landed behind him. Fellow Daoist, what do you want in exchange for I? Xiao Hua thought for a moment. He seemed to have seen this female cultivator last night. However, she was very far away, so he only swept his eyes over her. Hey! The female cultivator was slightly taken aback. Weren't you the one who sent Chao to look for me last night? Oh, so Kwa Yu is fellow Daoist. Xiao Hua immediately realized. Last night, he mistook Kwa Yu for a male cultivator, and Kwa Chao didn't explain. What? Is it not me, but someone else? Kwa Yu said unhappily. Hihi, Chao didn't make it clear yesterday. Xiao Hua hurriedly cupped his hands and said, this Xiao apologizes here. Kwa Yu's face was slightly happy, and she nodded. This old one hasn't seen that token for a long time. I originally wanted to look for it again in a few days, but Chao sincerely requested, so this old one took a long time to find it. Thank you for your help, fellow Daoist. Xiao Hua was very happy and said, if fellow Daoist needs anything, you can tell this Xiao. If this Xiao can satisfy fellow Daoist, I will try my best to satisfy you. No need. Kwa Yu waved her hand and said, you saved Chao. My blood-red island is indebted to you. How can this old one ask you for something? Oh, really? Thank you, fellow Daoist. Xiao Hua was overjoyed. Kwa Yu shook her head and said with a smile, this old one didn't agree to give it to you. This old one only said that you don't need to exchange it. Xiao Hua was a bit embarrassed and said with a smile, fellow Daoist, what do you mean? Kwa Yu pointed to the distance and said, there is a departure realm heaven in the Ring Island trial. When you go there, the disciples of Blood Red Island must defeat one person to pass, and the person who is defeated will be eliminated. Fellow Daoist Xiao, this old one will wait for fellow Daoist's arrival inside. If you win, this old one will give the token to fellow Daoist. Departure realm heaven? Xiao Hua muttered and said, alright, this Xiao accepts fellow Daoist Kwa's challenge. But, what if fellow Daoist Xiao loses? Kwa Yu narrowed her eyes and looked at Xiao Hua with interest. Fellow Daoist Kwa, are you that confident? Xiao Hua said with a smile, fellow Daoist Kwa seems to only be at the late stage of foundation establishment, right? Only at the late stage of foundation establishment. Kwa Yu covered her mouth and said, fellow Daoist Xiao is indeed a disciple of a large sect of thunder-controlling sect. Fellow Daoist Xiao seems to only be at the early stage of foundation establishment, right? Ha ha ha, that's right, this Xiao was wrong. Xiao Hua laughed and looked at Kwa Yu's hair. He patted his hand and took out a spiritual grass, saying with a smile, if this Xiao loses, this face-retaining grass will be fellow Daoist. Face. Face-retaining grass. When Kwa Yu heard this, she was overjoyed and almost stuttered. Is this really the face-retaining grass? Fellow Daoist, do you think my thunder-controlling sect's disciple would lie? Xiao Hua patted his hand and put the face-retaining grass back into his storage pouch. At this moment, Kwa Yu's heart was filled with regret. She really didn't expect that Xiao Hua would have something that all female cultivators on the Dawn Rain continent yearned for even in their dreams. Although she already had some grey hair, after taking the face-retaining grass, not only would her appearance not change, but the wrinkles at the corners of her eyes would also disappear and her grey hair would also become dark. Ari, this Xiao Hua is so young, yet he can be welcomed by the island master. How could he be a young cultivator? If he has the face-retaining grass, it wouldn't be surprising. Kwa Yu sighed inwardly. Her previous frosty elegance also disappeared. At this moment, Kwa Heng's figure flashed in midair. He held a dark green ocean pearl in his hand and said in a clear voice, disciples of the Blood-Red Island, are you ready? Reporting to the island master, we are ready. The disciples of the Blood-Red Island sweated in unison. Good. Kwa Heng said with a smile, today is the last day of the 10-year tournament. The previous results have already been recorded in a jade slip by the elders. After the results come out today, the top 10 will be decided. These 10 disciples will not only obtain suitable magic tools, but also get a glimpse of the secret books of my blood-red island. Their cultivation will definitely rise to another level. As he said this, Kwa Heng's body overflowed with brilliance. A water-blue color emerged from his hand like a fountain and poured into the ocean pearl. The ocean pearl immediately let out a wong-wong sound and trembled as it flew into the air. Swish, swish, swish. A series of wind whistled and the water-type heaven and earth spiritual chi in the air was sucked into the ocean pearl. It gave rise to gusts of wind. After absorbing the heaven and earth spiritual chi for half an incense stick's time, the ocean pearl grew to half a kai in size. The dark blue color inside became even deeper. When Xiao Hua's divine sense swept over it, he felt as if he was about to be sucked in. Just when Xiao Hua was surprised and guessing the effects of the ocean pearl, he saw Kwa Heng stretch out his hand and grab the ocean pearl. Then, he spread his wings and used his hand to smash the ocean pearl onto the beach of the blood-red island. With a loud peng sound, the ocean pearl smashed onto the beach. Not only did it splash up a lot of sand, but the ground under everyone's feet also shook. The sand that splashed up didn't fall down. Instead, it spread along the ocean pearl's spiritual chi and rapidly fluctuated. The ground under everyone's feet also shook more and more. Xiao Hua looked up and saw that all the disciples of the blood-red island were eager to give it a try. They were all staring at a place about 10 jong in front of them. Roar. A few earth-shattering roars were heard. Plumes of smoke and dust rose from the sea of sand. A blood-red bridge, over 100 feet wide, arched out from the smoke and dust. It gradually crept forward like a spirit snake. The rainbow bridge was either winding, tall, or deep into the island. Xiao Hua's divine sense chased after the rainbow bridge and shockingly discovered that this rainbow bridge circled around the entire blood-red island. Oh, so this is the island trial by fire. Xiao Hua suddenly understood. Above the rainbow bridge, there were more than 10 places where the spiritual chi was obscure. His divine sense couldn't penetrate them. He was afraid that they were some checkpoints of the trial. The departure heaven that Kwa Yu mentioned earlier was probably one of them. Disciples, tomorrow morning will be the limit. When the first ray of sunlight rises, the rainbow bridge will be closed. My blood-red island's once-in-a-decade competition is about to end. The first disciple to reach the end of the rainbow bridge will be the first in this island trial by fire. Kwa Heng raised his voice and said. After Kwa Heng finished speaking, he cast a spell on the transparent enchantment formed by the sea pearl. The enchantment melted like snow and flowed to the ground, connecting the beach where everyone was to the rainbow bridge. Several chi refinement disciples had long been impatient. As soon as the restriction opened, they immediately activated their flying talismans and flew toward the rainbow bridge like arrows leaving the bow. Husband, you go. I won't participate. Shue Shue said with a smile, I will wait for you at the end. Good. Xiao Hua nodded. He clapped his hand and took out a jade box. He said with a smile, Wife, you don't have to be idle. Take one of these beauty-retaining grass. Your husband still doesn't know how to refine the beauty-retaining pill. Wife, please bear with it for now. Okay. Shue Shue's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise when she saw Xiao Hua take out the beauty-retaining grass. Now that Xiao Hua gave it to her, she wasn't surprised. She reached out to take it and flew out of the beach with a smile. Fellow Daoist Xiao, we'll go first. If there's a chance, we'd like to see the means of the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples. After waiting for the Qi Refinement disciples and early Foundation Establishment disciples to fly away, a group of Middle Foundation Establishment and Late Foundation Establishment cultivators looked at Xiao Hua with a smile and said, To be continued. -8. Chapter 2161. Hehe, there really are people who are not convinced. Xiao Hua secretly laughed in his heart. He cupped his hands and said, Well said, but this Xiao wants to make a bet with all of you fellow Taoists. Whoever loses will have to come out from that rare thing inside the storage bag. Ha ha ha, no problem, fellow Daoist Xiao, I hope you have enough face-retaining grass. The cultivators all laughed and flew out using their magic power. Strange. How can they be so sure? Xiao Hua was somewhat surprised, but he still carefully used his magic power and was the last one to get on the rainbow bridge. Although he was not a body-refining cultivator, he had tempered his bones for many years. Even Qua Rhyming could not compare to him. He did not feel that these Blood Ray Island cultivators were stronger than him. Far away on the other shore of Kuhei Sea, many fishermen in the small fishing village had already begun to worship Xiao Hua before they set out to fish. No matter how far away they were from Kuhei Sea, in the villages and farms of Ocean City, Cloud City, and other places, the common people of the secular world had also planted the fine seeds gifted by Xiao Hua. This fine seed was clearly different from the previous rice. It was not only resistant to drought. Moreover, it matured early, and the food it produced was incomparably fragrant. Not to mention eating it after steaming, even if it was chewed in the mouth, it would still be sweet. Many babies in the peasant families, because their mothers did not have enough milk, ate the thin porridge made from this grain since they were young. Although they were only a few months old, their small chubby bodies and sparkling eyes were not inferior to those babies of rich families. The farmers' eyes were bright, and they fought to find this fine seed everywhere. What made them gratified and surprised was that this fine seed was actually the same price as ordinary fine seeds, and there were even many places where they did not need silver. Of course, not needing silver also had a price, and this price was to remember the owner of the fine seed and be grateful to this owner from the bottom of their heart. For the simple farmers, this was really not a big price to pay. They felt that they should be deeply grateful. So much so that when the farmers knew about this matter, when they went to get the fine seed, they had already brought a statue. Although the face was not clear, the person's name was not wrong. The 5 words Daoist Master Xiao Hua were clearly written on the body of the statue. Moreover, after these farmers returned, they really did pay their respects to him, because it was the same as thanking anyone. As long as they could bring benefits to the farmers, they would sincerely thank them. Outside a mountain village in the west of Mongolia, due to the drought, many people were carrying a human-shaped statue and climbing up a steep mountain with great difficulty. It seemed like they were going to worship the statue at the top of the mountain. At this moment, a rainbow streaked across the sky from afar, and 3 cultivators landed on the peak. The one in front was a young cultivator wearing a bright red Daoist robe. Behind him were 2 elderly men. However, the 2 old men were very respectful towards this cultivator. This was because the young cultivator was at the nascent soul stage while the 2 old men were at the mid-gold core stage and early gold core stage. "Master, you should rest here for a while," an old man said respectfully. He hurriedly took out several spirit fruits from his storage bag and handed them over respectfully as well. "Okay." The young cultivator nodded and waved his hand. A dark green praying mat appeared under the shade of the mountain peak. The cultivator floated up and landed on the praying mat. When the cultivator took a bite of the spirit fruit, he casually glanced around and saw a farmer climbing halfway up the mountain. "Hey, what are these mortals doing?" the cultivator asked casually. Another cultivator scanned with his divine sense and said with a smile, "The farmers are inviting the god. Right now, this place seems to be in a drought. They are inviting the Dragon King to reign. Ha 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 tilde, what a bunch of ignorant idiots." The young nascent soul cultivator laughed. "How can there be a Dragon King in this world? Even if there is one, it would be a pet in our hands. Who can give them clouds and rain? Why are they begging the Dragon King? They might as well beg I." "Hehe, that's right, master." The tall and thin cultivator who offered the spirit fruit smiled apologetically. "The people of this world are all stupid. How would they know that there are only immortals in this world and no gods? Moreover, they don't know how to beg the true immortal in front of them. Instead, they are praying to a fake god that doesn't exist. What a joke. PH, how can these fools be compared to us cultivators? How can they distinguish right from wrong?" The cultivator sneered with disdain. Just as he was about to look up, he frowned. "That's not right. From what this old man knows, the dragon god that the mortals worship is the head of a python dragon. It looks exactly like the python dragon of Taiching sect. This statue seems to be in a human shape. Hey! There seems to be writing on this statue. Daoist Xiao? What kind of immortal is this Daoist Xiao? Could he be a cultivator of my Meng country? He, master. The tall and thin cultivator laughed and explained, since it's a Daoist, it must be a nascent soul cultivator. But if it's a Daoist, then it must be a nascent soul cultivator. But if it's a Daoist, then it must be a Daoist Xiao. From what this disciple sees, this Xiao is a surname. Maybe that Qi refinement cultivator did something and they remembered it. That's why they directly called him Daoist Xiao. How could they know that the title Daoist is not a casual title? What Guanming said is true. That nascent soul cultivator was actually Daoist Jingru of Changbai sect. Also, master. Another cultivator hurriedly said, when one's cultivation reaches master's level, one can understand the nature and temper one's infant. The correct way is to enter the spirit-severing stage early and peek into the heavenly Tao. Who would have nothing to do with these fools? It must be some insignificant cultivator who forcibly made a name for himself. Daoist Jingru waved his hand and said, there's no need to pay attention to them. Guanming, the materials you collected this time are very good and will be very useful for the magic treasure I'm refining this time. Once the magic treasure is completed, Master will reward you heavily. I don't dare. It's all because Master's luck is good. This disciple was able to find it after a bit of searching. This disciple is filial to you. Master doesn't need to worry about it. Just as Hu Guanming was about to decline modestly, a series of gongs sounded and the merciful voice of Daoist Xiao was heard. Master, take this disciple to drive them away. Hu Guanming saw Daoist Jingru frown and hurriedly said, no need, Master has rested enough. Let's go. Daoist Jingru waved his sleeve and covered the two of them. Suddenly, they turned into a rainbow and rushed into the sky. Unknowingly, a few days had passed. The three of them passed by a swamp and saw that there were many incense candles placed on the terraced fields on the hillsides. Regardless of gender, old or young, everyone was placed in front of the incense candles and kowtowed to the candles. The smoke from the incense and candles lingered on the hillside. -8. Chapter 2162. Good heavens! Daoist Jing Ayu's divine sense swept over the enshrined tablet and said in astonishment, who is this Daoist Xiao? What kind of earth-shattering thing did he do? Why have I been seeing the same situation these past few days? Master, please wait a moment. Take this disciple to ask. Hu Guanfu was somewhat helpless. He really didn't want to talk to these farmers. After a while, Hu Guanfu's expression turned somewhat strange, carrying a trace of hesitation. Upon seeing this, Daoist Jing Ayu couldn't help but be startled and said in displeasure, what's wrong? Hu Guanfu, who is this Daoist Xiao? Is he that fellow Daoist I know? Or, is he a spirit-severing senior? All right, Master knows. Hu Guanfu hesitated for a moment and said, this Daoist Xiao is Xiao Hua. It is said that he is a young cultivator. As for his specific cultivation, these fools don't know. Xiao Hua. Daoist Jing Ayu raised his eyebrows and stood up with a hu sound. He anxiously said, is it Xiao Hua of the Imperial Thunder sect? This disciple doesn't know. Hu Guanfu smiled apologetically and said, those farmers also don't know which sect Xiao Hua comes from. However, I heard that he is a tall and thin young man. Daoist Jing Ayu's expression changed slightly. He extended his hand and a ray of light flashed. A large hand rushed over and grabbed the three farmers from the ground and lifted them high into the sky. Immortal, save us. Immortal, save us. The three farmers were greatly alarmed and their faces were deathly pale. Daoist Jing Ayu simply didn't listen. He grabbed one of the farmers and pressed his hand on the forehead of one of them. A blood-red light flashed on his hand and a sinister expression appeared on the farmer's face. Daoist Jing Ayu actually used a soul-searching technique on a secular person. In just a moment, a trace of a smile appeared on the farmer's face. The fear in his eyes disappeared and was replaced by a vacant look. Daoist Jing Yu waved his hand as if he didn't care about the farmer's life or death. He suddenly threw the farmer down from the sky. Immortal, spare us. Immortal, spare us. The other two farmers pleaded with all their might, but Daoist Jing Yu didn't let them go. They didn't know how they had offended this nascent soul cultivator. Their souls were searched and thrown down from the sky for no reason. Xiao Hua. It really is Xiao Hua. Daoist Jing Sai's face is ferocious as he roars. The last experimental learning didn't take your life, yet you still dare to come out for experimental learning. You actually dared to leave the Imperial Lightning Sect. You actually dare to come to Mongolia. It even caused such a sensation in Mongolia. You're simply looking down on this old man. Do you think I won't be able to find you if you don't go near the Changbai sect? Daoist Jing Yu was so angry that he was speechless. Yes, Xiao Hua had taken away the Grand Universe teleportation token, taken many of his medicinal pills, and even assassinated Fan Tong. This was something that Daoist Jing Yu, who had always been extremely protective and narcissistic, couldn't tolerate. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua had obtained these items at the Feather Immortal Assembly, so Daoist Jing Yu had no reason to do so. Now that Xiao Hua actually ran to Meng country, how could Daoist Jing Yu not be angry? If you're here to gain experience, then so be it. If you're sneaking around, no one will know. You actually used the banner of the Imperial Lightning Sect's Xiao Hua. Those who didn't know would still be fine, but those who knew wouldn't ridicule him. Pa Daoist Jing Yu claps his hand and takes out one of the storage pouches. It's actually the storage pouch that Xiao Hua gave to the Changbai sect to store the remaining medicinal pills. Daoist Jing Yu spits a mouthful of essence blood on it, then he continuously seals with both hands and hits the storage pouch. As the storage pouch emits a bloody brilliance, that brilliance suddenly flies up and flies in the direction of the Kuehe Sea. Good, it's actually the Kuehe Sea. Daoist Jing Yu laughs. Let the Kuehe Sea be the place where you die. Daoist Jing Yu's figure turns into a rainbow and flies towards the bloody brilliance. A voice comes over, Hu Guanfu, you all return to the mountain for the time being. Once I kill Xiao Hua, I'll return to the sect. Yes, disciple understands. Hu Guanfu looks at the other disciple. The two of them exchange a look, then their figures also fly up and return to the Changbai sect. Poor Zhong Yejing, she originally wanted to handle Xiao Hua's matter beautifully and spread Xiao Hua's reputation. She wanted to repay Xiao Hua's great kindness and even make up for the misunderstanding between Zhongling Mountain Village and Xiao Hua. However, she didn't expect that her orders would be carried out by the secular disciples of the Zhong clan without any discount, and even double. The result of this completion was that Xiao Hua's enemy was directly in front of Xiao Hua. Poor Xiao Hua, at this moment, he was only slightly shocked. He actually thought that this warning sign was the difficulty of the island trial ahead. Of course, just as Xiao Hua flew onto the Rainbow Bridge, there was suddenly a huge force pressing down on him. This huge force was extremely strange. It was similar to the pressure that Xiao Hua encountered before, but it was also completely different. That force seemed to be tearing in all directions at the same time, and what it was tearing was Xiao Hua's body. An extremely uncomfortable feeling welled up in his heart. He didn't even know how to circulate the true essence in his meridians. I understand. Xiao Hua's figure fell slightly, slowly preparing to land on the Rainbow Bridge. He thought to himself, the force on the Rainbow Bridge is tearing in all directions, giving people a kind of unbalanced feeling. It's as if a cultivator is in a kind of inverted or crooked space. If it's in a normal space, true essence will circulate in the meridians as usual. In this kind of space with an illusion, true essence might not be able to coordinate with the body, it might be stagnant, or even go into a fork in the road, and thus suffer from chi deviation. The cultivators of Bloodray Island are all body refiners. The coordination of true essence must be combined with the tempering of the body. This is their basic homework. Fellow Daoist Xiao. At this moment, Kwa Heng's voice transmission came over with a hidden smile. On this Rainbow Bridge, there are some places that you can't touch, and some places you can only walk. Fellow Daoist Xiao, you can't land here. Once you land, There will be even more powerful restrictions and tests waiting for you. Ah! Xiao Hua was slightly taken aback. He hurriedly circulated his magic power. At this moment, his feet were only a few inches away from the rainbow bridge. The ribbons on the rainbow bridge were already blurred, and there seemed to be some obscure spiritual power gradually forming. If it wasn't for Kwa Heng's reminder, the restrictions on the rainbow bridge would have been activated. Many thanks, Island Master Kwa. Xiao Hua raised his voice and said, this Xiao didn't know there were so many taboos. Moreover, this Blood Ray Island's magic power has really opened this Xiao's eyes. Ha ha ha, I'm indebted to the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples' praise. Kwa Heng also laughed and said, fellow Daoist Xiao, go ahead. There are many interesting tests on this rainbow bridge. Fellow Daoist can give it a try. Hearing this, Xiao Hua laughed loudly, and his figure slightly swayed. He had originally cultivated the Buddhist sect's great strength Vajra Dharma body. Even the chi-refining disciples of Blood Ray Island weren't afraid of this little thing for body refinement, so how could Xiao Hua be afraid? Without using the bright thunder escape, Xiao Hua urged the wind escape technique that he felt a moment ago. His figure very strangely floated up, and like a flowing cloud, he flew forward. His tilde others didn't feel it, but Kwa Heng could see Xiao Hua's cultivation level. He knew that the initial restrictions on the rainbow bridge were somewhat strange. The stronger they were, the stronger they would be. Even if he was at the end of the rainbow bridge, it was impossible for him to move as fast as usual, let alone with his elegant posture. He, I'm afraid those few little guys will be tortured by Xiao Hua. The corners of Kwa Heng's mouth curled into a smile. He seemed to recall the arrogance of several late Foundation establishment disciples who came to his place to test him last night. Sure enough, just as Xiao Hua had thought, he had only flown a few dozen feet when the pressure suddenly rose. If Xiao Hua hadn't been prepared, or if he hadn't been able to control his true essence with ease, he would have definitely been lifted into the air by this force. Although the dozen or so chi-refining disciples had flown earlier than everyone else, their feet were now facing up, and their heads were facing down. They were adjusting their sense of direction. They were adjusting their true chi. Motherfucker, I'm afraid this force can change at any time. Xiao Hua laughed inwardly. Otherwise, these Blood Red Island disciples who know the inside out about the trial by fire would all be caught. In the following several hundred zhong distance, that indescribable force suddenly moved up and down, suddenly to the left and suddenly to the right. At one point, it was even extremely restrained, as if a large hand was grabbing onto Xiao Hua. The true essence in his body was extremely difficult to circulate, and his figure was also falling down. At this moment, several Foundation establishment disciples fell below Xiao Hua. These disciples' feet were firmly stuck on the rainbow bridge. No matter how they urged their magic power, they were unable to free themselves from the rainbow bridge. It seemed that one of them had already rolled up his Daoist robe, revealing his thick arms. That arm's bowl-like fist was precisely hitting the restriction below his feet. However, when Xiao Hua flew past this section, suddenly, another unparalleled force descended from the sky, imprisoning Xiao Hua's entire body. His true essence also stagnated, and he was simply unable to mobilize his magic power. Xiao Hua's body couldn't help but fall down. How can this be? Xiao Hua thought of the embarrassment of those Foundation establishment disciples just now, and he was shocked. Others could make a fool of themselves, but he couldn't. That was the face of the Imperial Thunder Sect, making others laugh. Rise. Xiao Hua's body slightly slid forward. He didn't rely on magic power, but pure flowing cloud movement technique, and even some ethereal steps techniques. Borrowing this moment of respite, Xiao Hua shook his arms. A blood-red brilliance flashed around his body, and one could almost hear bang 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 sounds. Many of the restrictions on the Rainbow Bridge were actually broken by him. The true essence in his meridians could circulate, and Xiao Hua's flying technique could be used. Mph, you want to use restrictions to imprison this young master? Dream on. Xiao Hua was secretly pleased. His body swayed again, and incomparably dashed across the Rainbow Bridge. Very quickly, he turned a corner. However, when he turned the corner, he was once again stupefied in midair. Below his feet, on the Rainbow Bridge that was roughly several hundred zhong in front of him, there was a black mass of people moving about. It was precisely all of the Blood Ray Island disciples who had landed on the Rainbow Bridge. At this moment, the Rainbow Bridge had already transformed into a towering mountain path, and everyone was doing their best to climb. To be continued. -8. Chapter 2163. Damn it. I didn't make a mistake. Xiao Hua almost stretched out a small hand from his throat. No wonder Kuaheng said just now that there are some places that can't be landed, and some places that must be landed. This place is a place that tests the strength of the physical body. Xiao Hua hardened his heart. Since this young master is already flying, I might as well not land. I'll directly fly to a high place in front and show them my power. While thinking, Xiao Hua urged his magic power. Although his figure wasn't as graceful as before, it was more or less the same as an ordinary cultivator's flying technique. He flew over the heads of a group of Blood Ray Island disciples and flew to a high place on the Rainbow Bridge. Ayo, someone can fly? Which senior brother is this? Immediately, someone clamored. To be honest, they already knew that one couldn't fly in this place. All magic power was restricted, and only the physical body could be controlled. Perhaps some people had tried before but failed. Now that they saw someone actually fly over, how could they not be surprised? Good, as expected of a thunder-controlling sect disciple. He's really different. The disciple who recognized Xiao Hua panted as he ran and climbed while looking up at the sky and sighing with emotion. Xiao Hua's little tail gradually rose up. However, after he flew for nearly 3 minutes, below him were several late-stage Foundation establishment disciples. Xiao Hua originally wanted to see their envious gazes, but one of them actually had some ridicule in his eyes. Strange, is there something wrong? Xiao Hua immediately became suspicious and hurriedly released his divine sense. However, this place naturally also restricted divine sense. Without waiting for his divine sense to leave his body, a powerful hurricane descended from the sky and blew towards Xiao Hua, wanting to blow him straight out of the Rainbow Bridge. I say. Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why can't you even give me a chance to steal a trick? If it was someone else, this hurricane would probably blow them away in one breath. However, Xiao Hua had just learned the flowing cloud movement technique, which was the wind escape technique. This wind was admittedly powerful, but it was precisely what Xiao Hua wanted. Xiao Hua controlled his body to descend while flying forward. When he landed steadily, he had already landed in front of everyone. It can also be like this. The few late-stage Foundation establishment disciples in front were somewhat stupefied. Even in their dreams, they didn't think that this punishment technique would actually send Xiao Hua flying so far. I'll run. Xiao Hua landed on the ground and laughed heartily. As his feet glided, he dashed towards the top of the Rainbow Bridge. His figure was precisely ethereal steps. The Rainbow Bridge was still under their feet. Stepping on it was no different from stepping on a beach. It seemed like there was sand around their feet, making it difficult to walk, let alone walk up. The group of Foundation establishment and aura refining disciples were like ordinary farmers climbing a mountain. Their foreheads were covered in sweat as they climbed with great difficulty. Unlike the disciples of Scarlet Island, the tall and skinny lad who was leading the group was actually walking in an indescribable pace. His waist was slightly swaying and he seemed to have a rhythm to his movement. It looked like it was still rather easy. Xiao Hua. How interesting. Kuaheng could naturally see everything that was happening on the Rainbow Bridge. He narrowed his eyes slightly and said with a smile while feeling surprised. After passing the peak of the Rainbow Bridge, there was another stretch of slow road. Xiao Hua saw that the restriction on his body had disappeared and hesitated. He didn't know if he should use his magic power to fly or continue using the ethereal step. Fellow Daoist Xiao, good luck. At this moment, a burly disciple of Scarlet Island caught up from behind. Without any hesitation, he activated his magic power and rushed forward at an extremely fast speed. Peng! It was as if he had broken through a restriction. With a flash of brilliance, the fatty disappeared without a trace. Damn it, what's going on now? Xiao Hua looked at the empty rainbow bridge in front of him in a daze. Hey, fellow Daoist Xiao, why don't you hurry over? Immediately after, several late-stage Foundation establishment cultivators also caught up, and one of them asked curiously, "If fellow Daoist Xiao doesn't want to go, we'll go first." Seeing that Xiao Hua didn't speak, the two people behind him hurriedly activated their magic power and rushed towards the restriction. "Oh, fellow Daoist Xiao, hurry up and go. Use your fastest speed to rush towards the restriction." The cultivator who reminded him earlier didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly said, "The greater the impact, the further the distance the restriction will teleport. Moreover, the quota is limited." He saw that the disciple had also disappeared. Xiao Hua no longer hesitated. He activated his magic power and used the bright thunder escape. With a boom, he rushed into the restriction. Rumble. A series of rumbling sounds came from the Rainbow Bridge and the entire bridge shook slightly. A few of the Scarlet Island disciples who were climbing the peak actually lost their balance and fell down with a few plop sound. It didn't matter if they sat down, but they saw a red brilliance flash above the Rainbow Bridge. Their bodies were completely submerged by the Rainbow Bridge as if they had fallen into the sea, gradually leaking out from under the Rainbow Bridge. Who is so shameless to do such a thing? Several Scarlet Island disciples who were eliminated shouted in exasperation. Imperial Thunder Sect is indeed the Imperial Thunder Sect. Hua Hang sighed and shook his head slightly. Fortunately, I didn't listen to the instigation of those little bastards. They wanted me to personally go down and compete with this guy. They were simply looking for their own humiliation. This flying technique is my shortcoming. Compared to this guy, I'm afraid I'm not even fit to carry his shoes. However, I heard from Hua Qiaoer that Xiao Hua is a cultivator with a benevolent heart. Moreover, he has a request for my Scarlet Island. Yes, he can even bring great benefits to my Scarlet Island. Hua Hang thought inwardly. Unfortunately, Hua Qiaoer and Rhyming have already made a heart oath. They can't speak blindly. They can only remind me to treat Xiao Hua well. Moreover, they also vaguely warned me not to provoke him. Look at Xiao Hua again. Today, he participated in some island trial for no reason. Isn't it just to give me a warning? Hehe, how many years have I lived? How can I not see through this? However, what good things can Xiao Hua have to make my Scarlet Island happy? Sigh, Xiao Hua actually charged into the huge stone array. This guy, how fast is his flying speed? This huge stone array, if one doesn't have the strength of a late gold core realm, it's impossible to pass through the restriction. This is bad. This late gold core realm strength is only for my Scarlet Island disciples. He is a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. However, this huge stone array is hidden within the Rainbow Bridge. Even I can't control it unless I interrupt the entire trial. This is bad, this is bad. This Imperial Thunder Sect disciple will be smashed into a meat patty. I'm in trouble, Hua Hang muttered. His expression changed rapidly. His figure flew, and he rapidly flew toward the opposite side of Scarlet Island. As for Xiao Hua, he felt a sudden pressure on his body. Traces of black and white light flashed before his eyes. Xiao Hua knew that what the Scarlet Island disciple said was true. He was indeed transported. -8. Chapter 2164. Bang! A loud sound rang out. Without waiting for Xiao Hua to open his eyes, an extremely cryptic fluctuation came over. Xiao Hua scanned with his divine sense and was immediately shocked. An absurd feeling welled up in his heart. At this moment, Xiao Hua was in a vast starry sky. In front of him were many planets that were constantly revolving. The trajectory was very obvious. It was extremely chaotic. The loud sound just now was the sound of two planets colliding with each other in the distance. Xiao Hua's divine sense could not scan the end of the starry sky, but he was complaining in his heart, "Damn it, this starry sky is definitely not a real starry sky. This bloody red island can't have such a powerful transmission array. But how can there be so many ancient ruins on the islands overseas? Meng country it's really a strange place." While he was thinking about this, A fierce howl of the wind resounded from behind Xiao Hua. Besides that, the howl of the wind was accompanied by a shackling force that enveloped the space in an area of 300 m around Xiao Hua. Damn it, did I make a mistake? Why is it a shackling force again? Xiao Hua really hated the shackling force that appeared from time to time on Bloody Red Island. It restricted all true essence, leaving no trace of magic power in his body. Everything had to rely on his physical body. Since he was a cultivator, he must have the awareness of a cultivator. If he relied on his physical body, he would be a boorish man. Naturally, this shackling force also blocked Xiao Hua's divine sense. At this moment, Xiao Hua could only rely on his physical strength. It's just a trial for Bloody Red Island disciples. I don't believe that I would be afraid of this. Xiao Hua suddenly turned around and stretched out his hand, holding the devil hammer in his hand. Behind Xiao Hua, a meteor streaked across the night sky, rushing toward Xiao Hua. Although Xiao Hua's face was calm, his heart was also nervous. After all, this was a starry sky. If a meteor really came, how could he catch it? Fortunately, the power of the meteor was swift and fierce, and the wind was already blowing against Xiao Hua's face, almost suffocating him. In Xiao Hua's field of vision, the meteor was not as big as he imagined. It was only a few zhong in size. This kind of huge rock, even if it came from afar, Xiao Hua was confident that he could still fight it. Go! Xiao Hua didn't dare to stay in place and wait for the meteor to fly over. He quickly rushed forward, raised his devil hammer, and smashed it in the direction of the meteor. Boom! Xiao Hua's ears vibrated with ringing. A wave of pain came from Xiao Hua's arm that was holding the devil hammer. Xiao Hua himself was shaken and sent flying. That meteor was actually shattered by Xiao Hua. Ha 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 tilde. After the soreness in his arm subsided, a refreshing feeling emerged from the bottom of his heart. Xiao Hua looked up to the sky and laughed loudly. No matter how many meteors there are, let them all fall. Even if it's a meteor shower, I will smash it flat. Xiao Hua's arrogant voice reverberated through the starry sky. As if he had hit the nail on the head, the two planets around him suddenly emitted a dazzling brilliance and flew towards Xiao Hua like moths to a flame. Boom! Boom! Although the two meteors fell at the same time, they were still smashed apart by Xiao Hua without delay. Hey! This array seems to have an extremely great effect on refining the body. Needless to say, Xiao Hua's arm became even more sore and numb. But after the numbness, a comfortable feeling once again spread throughout his body. Xiao Hua somewhat felt that his body had a slight improvement. Great! Knowing that the starry sky had such an effect, Xiao Hua's spirit was greatly shaken. He waved his devil hammer and waited in the sky again. Just as Xiao Hua expected, after the two meteors, another 3 meteors came. They emitted a sharp sound of wind as they attacked Xiao Hua from 3 directions. Naturally, the size of these 3 meteors was slightly larger than the previous one. Although Xiao Hua didn't have any magic power at this time, he still had the ethereal steps and the Big Dipper divine fist. Dealing with these meteors wasn't a problem. Once the number of meteors reached 6, Xiao Hua would be unable to deal with them by relying on the devil hammer alone. Therefore, Xiao Hua didn't hesitate to take out the Great Wisdom Sword. He used the Heavenly Staff technique to deal with the 7 meteors that were pouncing towards Xiao Hua from all directions. The meteors in the starry sky were quite ingenious. Although 7 or 8 huge meteors smashed towards the small Xiao Hua at the same time, there was an extremely subtle gap between them. Not only did they smash at different angles, but when they got close, they absolutely wouldn't touch each other. When Xiao Hua waved the Heavenly Staff technique, he couldn't stop one strike after another for even a moment. This was because as long as there was a slight pause, the following meteors would immediately smash into his body. When there were 24 meteors in a group, Xiao Hua finished smashing the first 22 meteors. A wave of exhaustion suddenly came from his body. This was something that Xiao Hua had never felt before. This is bad. Xiao Hua secretly complained in his heart. He knew that as long as he finished smashing the 24 meteors in a group, the comfortable feeling afterwards would immediately drive away this feeling of exhaustion. Or perhaps, he could also rely on the flow of the Big Dipper Divine Fist to eliminate this exhaustion. However, The left and right meteors were right in front of him. Where would he find the free time? Just at this moment, Xiao Hua suddenly had a flash of inspiration. He slightly closed his eyes, and the Heart Sutra of the wind escape technique flowed. He comprehended the two incoming boulders from the left and right at the same time. As the corner of Xiao Hua's mouth faintly rose, he very confidently raised his hands slightly and raised the Great Wisdom Sword horizontally. With a loud bang, the two meteors smashed into the two ends of the Great Wisdom Sword at almost the same time. The two boulders shattered at the same time. Xiao Hua didn't use the slightest bit of strength. However, the comfortable feeling of Xiao Hua's chi wings also didn't appear at the same time. Just when Xiao Hua wanted to use the Big Dipper Divine Fist, he saw the two shattered boulders suddenly swirl up in the air, separately forming two vortexes that enveloped Xiao Hua. Ouch! Xiao Hua stared blankly. Just when he was about to dodge, he saw the two vortexes faintly flickering with black and white brilliance. It was the legendary array that was about to activate. Thus, Xiao Hua didn't resist anymore, allowing the vortexes of shattered rocks to envelop him. After the brilliance flashed, Xiao Hua's figure disappeared from this space, and the hundreds of boulders that had previously disappeared gradually flashed again. Good. Just when Xiao Hua's figure appeared on the rainbow bridge, Kua Hang's praise rang in his ears. Xiao Hua composed himself and saw Kua Hang standing outside the rainbow bridge, looking at him with a kind of admiration on his face. Fellow Daoist praise. Xiao Hua complained as soon as they met. Why does this rainbow bridge sound have so many taboos? Why didn't you tell me in advance? You made this Xiao Hua very embarrassed. Fellow Daoist Xiao, you really hid your strength well. Kua Hang simply ignored Xiao Hua's complaints, his eyes flashing with a strange light as he said, "My Blood Red Island's boulder array hasn't been broken in for thousands of years. No, it should be for tens of thousands of years. I remember in the ancient records that the last person who entered was a late gold core stage senior whose cultivation was extremely close to the nascent soul state." Ah! Xiao Hua stared blankly. He didn't expect that just by casually flying, he would cause such a big trouble. Hehe, fellow Daoist praise is a bit exaggerated. Xiao Hua laughed mischievously and said, "Just now, weren't there a few late Foundation establishment disciples who were transported together with this Xiao? Could it be that they didn't enter this boulder array? My praise isn't exaggerated at all." Kua Hang laughed and said, "The restrictions that were taken out just now were to test the degree of body tempering of my Blood Red Island's disciples. Whoever can fly with the greatest weight can be transported into the corresponding array. This array has the Yellow Wind Array, Invisible Rain Array, Open Fire Array, Flying Snow Array, Fine Metal Array, and Boulder Array. If every disciple who enters the array can pass the test of the array, not only can they obtain certain benefits from the array, they can also be transported across the Rainbow Bridge according to the power of the array. Among them, the Yellow Wind Array, Invisible Rain Array, and Open Fire Array are open arrays, while the other three are hidden arrays. Without the cultivation of Gold Core Stage and above, it is impossible to enter. Those little brats probably learned some tricks and know that as long as they fly fast, their speed increases and the weight of the impact on the restrictions will also increase. That's why they tried their best to fly. With their cultivation, at most, they can enter the Invisible Rain Array. I'm afraid that they can't even enter the Open Fire Array. This old man didn't expect that fellow Daoist Xiao could actually enter the Boulder Array directly. Kua Hang said with interest, that Boulder Array is something that even this old man didn't have the chance to enter. What benefits did fellow Daoist Xiao get inside? How many boulders did you dodge? Dodged? Xiao Hua was taken aback. He rolled his eyes and didn't answer Kua Hang's question. Instead, he asked curiously, "Since fellow Daoist Kua knows that I can enter the boulder array, you naturally have the ability to control the Rainbow Bridge. Furthermore, the Ocean Pearl, ha ha ha." When Kua Hang saw that Xiao Hua was being careful, he explained, "I won't hide it from fellow Daoist Xiao. The Rainbow Bridge isn't just a training ground for my Blood Ray Island's disciples, it is also a powerful method for my Blood Ray Island to defend against enemies. The Ocean Pearl is this old man's artifact, and it is also an artifact passed down by the previous island lord. This old man can control the Ocean Pearl to bring out the Rainbow Bridge, and I can sense the movements within the rainbow bridge. However, as for the boulder array, this old man doesn't know where the hidden array is located. Oh, I see. Seeing that the array was related to Bloodray Island's secrets, Xiao Hua didn't ask any more questions and was about to fly up again. However, Kua Hang persevered and asked, "Fellow Daoist Xiao, you haven't told this old man how many boulders did you dodge?" "Hehe, fellow Daoist Kua, can you tell me how many boulders did you dodge?" Xiao Hua wasn't in a hurry to answer Kua Hang's question. Kua Hang rolled his eyes and hesitated for a moment before replying, "I'll let fellow Daoist Xiao know. I heard that a certain senior shattered 17 boulders and dodged 18 boulders. I'm ashamed." Xiao Hua's face was flushed with shame. He cupped his hands and said, "Compared to senior, this Xiao is still far inferior. This Xiao only shattered 14 boulders. I had just dodged the 15th boulder when I was sent out." Even though Kua Hang's expression was calm, his heart was in turmoil. When he explained the situation in detail, he had already increased the number of boulders. In reality, it was 12 boulders. However, he still didn't expect that Xiao Hua was more powerful than he had expected. -8. Chapter 2165. This was because according to the records, Bloodray Island's Chi refinement disciples were considered to have passed the test by passing 3 layers of boulders. Passing 6 layers of boulders was considered to have passed the foundation establishment stage. Passing 9 layers of boulders was considered to have passed the body tempering stage of the Golden Core realm. However, he didn't expect Xiao Hua to actually shatter 14 boulders. In other words, Xiao Hua's body refining technique was even more powerful than that late-stage Golden Core realm senior who was about to conceive a nascent soul. Kua Hang knew that Xiao Hua could only say less and absolutely not more about the numbers Xiao Hua mentioned. This guy, with such a body refining technique, why did he come to my blood-red island? Kua Hang was even more curious. But seeing Xiao Hua looking at the front of the rainbow bridge and about to fly again, Kua Hang couldn't help but laugh. "Fellow Daoist Xiao, what's wrong? You still want to continue the trial? My Blood-Red Island's trial is body refining technique and magic. Fellow Daoist's body refining technique is so powerful, not to mention your magic power. Why do you still need to participate in the trial?" Kua Hang curled his lips in his heart. "You've already shown your strength, and I also know. What's the point of continuing the trial?" Xiao Hua laughed. "There's a fellow Daoist called Kua Yu on your island. He invited me to a battle in Departure Realm Heaven. I can't not go." Ha ha ha. Kua Hang laughed. Departure Realm Heaven is in the middle of the Rainbow Bridge. Fellow Daoist Xiao has already crossed 80% of the bridge. How can you return? Besides, Kua Yu chose Departure Realm Heaven because he wanted to use the illusion to confine his magic power and divine sense. He could only rely on his physical strength to fight. His plan. I'm afraid he's also part of fellow Daoist Xiao's plan, right? I can't go back. Xiao Hua was stunned. He turned around and flew back. Who would have thought that just as he flew one jong, a huge force blocked his front, preventing him from retreating. This huge force was completely different from before. It was extremely powerful and couldn't be broken by relying on his physical body alone. Fellow Daoist Xiao, you don't need to try anymore. Kua Hang laughed. After crossing half of the Rainbow Bridge, you can't go back unless fellow Daoist Xiao's magic power surpasses nascent soul. That's just one realm higher than me. Hehe, so that's how it is. Xiao Hua laughed mischievously and said, in that case, the disciple closest to this Xiao. Kua Hang nodded and said, yes, we just passed through the leaving realm heaven and reached the halfway point of the Rainbow Bridge. Fellow Daoist Xiao, you don't have to bother with them. Come, fellow Daoist Xiao, we will wait at the end. This old man wants to know why fellow Daoist Xiao is looking for the Sunset Island. Oh my, could it be that fellow Daoist Kua knows where the Sunset Island is? Xiao Hua was pleasantly surprised. That's right. Kua Hang nodded and said, I'm afraid I'm the only one who knows about this in Kuhei Sea. Actually, this old man is also surprised. Where did fellow Daoist Xiao learn of the setting sun island? Now that Xiao Hua had shown his strength, he didn't stay on the Rainbow Bridge to train. Instead, he flew out of the Rainbow Bridge and followed Kwa Hang to the end of the Rainbow Bridge. Landing in front of a cave, Kwa Hang looked at Xiao Hua and said, "Yesterday, Xiao told this old man that fellow Daoist Xiao is looking for the Sunset Island." This old man was very surprised. The Sunset Island has been there for hundreds of thousands of years, maybe even millions of years. No one mentioned it. Why did fellow Daoist suddenly look for the Sunset Island? Hundreds of thousands of years. Xiao Hua was stunned. What's wrong with the Sunset Island? Fellow Daoist Xiao hasn't answered this old man's question, right? Kwa Hang didn't answer but asked instead. Xiao Hua nodded and said, "This old man got some information from the city lord of Haoming City. This old man is looking for a kind of cultivation technique, which can only be found on the Sunset Island, so, Haoming City?" Kwa Hang seemed to be thinking about something. After a while, he stared at Xiao Hua and said, "Fellow Daoist Xiao, what kind of cultivation technique do you need?" Fellow Daoist Kwa, you only need to tell this old man where the Sunset Island is. Why do you need to know what cultivation technique this old man is looking for? Xiao Hua said hesitantly. Actually. Kwa Hang hesitated for a moment and said, "Actually, the Bloody Red Island is the Sunset Island." Well, you can't say it like that. However, fellow Daoist Xiao, just think of the Bloody Red Island as the Sunset Island. Xiao Hua was even more shocked, but he immediately understood. Of course, the Bloody Red Island was built on the body refining technique. Every male disciple had extraordinary strength. Wasn't that the effect of bone tempering? If it was purely for the body refining technique, why would the male disciples have such a high level of cultivation? He really couldn't see the tall mountain for a leaf. Good Xiao Hua clapped his hands and said, "Since fellow Daoist Kwa is so frank, then this old man won't hide it. This old man is looking for the Sunset Island's body refining technique." Strange. Kwa Hang laughed and pointed at Xiao Hua, saying, "Fellow Daoist Xiao's body refining technique is actually more profound than this old man's. This old man doesn't think that my Bloody Red Island's body refining technique can be of any help to fellow Daoist Xiao." Alas, actually. Only now did Xiao Hua realize that he had been led astray by Kwa Hang. He smiled bitterly and said, "This old man was wrong just now. This old man actually wants the Sunset Island's bone tempering technique." Bone tempering technique? Kwa Hang's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. Why does fellow Daoist Xiao want the bone tempering technique? This old man cultivates the lightning evasion technique of my Imperial Thunder sect, and it needs the help of external forces to temper my bones. Otherwise, the lightning evasion technique can't reach great success. Xiao Hua said without hesitation. This old man also thought of many ways. Later, I got the news of the Sunset Island from Haoming City's Yarrow Hongzhen. Only then did I come all the way here. This old man didn't expect that Kwa Chiaoer and Kwa Riming were both descendants of the Sunset Island. To tell you the truth, fellow Daoist Xiao, the bone tempering technique is a secret technique of my Bloody Red Island. Kwa Hang sighed and said, "However, this bone tempering technique is extremely difficult to cultivate. If you only cultivate the bone tempering technique, you can't reach great success. Therefore, my ancestor combined the bone tempering technique with the help of other body tempering techniques. Only then could the bone tempering technique of my Bloody Red Island have some success. However, look at my physique and the other male cultivators of my Bloody Red Island. These are the drawbacks of cultivating the bone tempering technique and the body tempering technique. Fellow Daoist Xiao, do you think this bone tempering technique will have an effect on your lightning evasion technique?" Yes. Xiao Hua nodded without hesitation. Kwa Hang thought for a moment and said, "This old man already understands your intention. Then, what will you use to exchange with this old man? From what Chiaoer said, you have something that this old man urgently needs. However, this old man can't think of anything after thinking about it for a long time." With a smile on his face, Xiao Hua suddenly flicked his big sleeve and covered Kwa Hang from top to bottom. A kind of confining force was generated from his big sleeve, which was extremely similar to the one on the Rainbow Bridge. All of a sudden, all of Kwa Hang's magic power was confined. Ah! World in the sleeve! Kwa Hang was suddenly startled. Soon after, he was wild with joy. At the same time, the red brilliance around his body flashed extremely quickly, and the big sleeve of his daoist robe was also raised. -8. Chapter 2166. Unfortunately, under Xiao Hua's heaven and earth sleeve technique, Kwa Hang's daoist robe was like a broken bag that couldn't be opened. The heaven and earth sleeve technique that Kwa Hang was usually proud of actually didn't work. Just as Kwa Hang's expression slightly changed, Xiao Hua swung his sleeve, and that restrictive force immediately dissipated as if it had never appeared and was withdrawn into Xiao Hua's sleeve. So that's how it is. Kwa Hang clapped his hands and said, "This old man was wondering what could make this old man submit. It turns out that fellow daoist Xiao obtained the complete heaven and earth sleeve technique of my blood-red island. He, fellow daoist Kwa, you're wrong." Xiao Hua shook his head and said, "This old man also copied a jade slip in the Imperial Thunder sect. This heaven and earth sleeve technique doesn't completely belong to blood-red island anymore. This." Kwa Hang's expression was somewhat uncertain. After pondering for a moment, he sighed and said, "Presumably, Xiao has already told fellow daoist Xiao that the heaven and earth sleeve technique of my blood-red island is already incomplete." "Yes, that's right." Xiao Hua also secretly nodded and answered. "All right." Kwa Hang said again, "This old man won't talk about the heaven and earth sleeve technique. Since fellow daoist Xiao has already copied a copy in the Imperial Thunder sect, presumably, the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect will also practice it in the future. As for the bone tempering technique, fellow daoist Xiao definitely can't leave a copy in your sect." Hearing this, Xiao Hua was overjoyed and said with a smile, "Not only the bone tempering technique, but also the heaven and earth sleeve technique. This old man can also promise that only the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect's myriad Thunder Valley can practice it." Great. Although Kwa Hang said it was great, he was really bitter in his heart. Of course, this old man took the thing that he lost and wanted his own thing, but he couldn't refuse. Firstly, this old man had already left a copy of the thing that he lost, so it was meaningless for him to keep this old man here. Secondly, he didn't have the confidence to keep this old man here. "Fellow daoist Xiao, please keep this matter a secret for this old man. You can't let the disciples of Blood-Red Island know about it." Kwa Hang clapped his hands and took out a slightly larger jade slip and said, "Bone tempering technique is only the foundation of another technique of Blood-Red Island that has been completely lost, but now it has already become a secret technique, unique technique of Blood-Red Island. If this disciple finds out that this old man has leaked the information, I'm afraid he won't let it go." Fellow daoist Kwa, you traded an insignificant instance for the complete jade slip of Blood-Ray Island's long-lost universe within sleeve. In that case, fellow daoist praising is a meritorious service to Blood-Ray Island. Who would spout nonsense? Xiao Hua already knew from Kwa Chiao how important this world in sleeve was to Scarlet Island. Naturally, he ignored Kwa Hang's nonsense. He took the jade slip and immersed his divine sense into it. After a short moment, a smile appeared on the corners of Xiao Hua's mouth. He clapped his hands and took out a jade slip as well, and then he said with a smile, "Fellow daoist Kwa, please take a look." Kwa Heng's hands trembled slightly, almost imperceptibly. He took the jade slip and hurriedly checked it. After a long while, Kwa Heng let out a long sigh. He put the jade slip into his storage bag and said, "I've finally completed the sleeve cosmos technique. I've fulfilled the wishes of several generations of island masters." As he spoke, he bowed towards Xiao Hua and said, "Many thanks, fellow daoist Xiao." "Ha ha ha, no need, no need." Xiao Hua hurriedly supported Kwa Heng. "I also want to thank," however, before Xiao Hua could finish speaking, another burst of indescribable palpitation surged into his heart. It interrupted Xiao Hua's words. "My goodness, what is it now?" Xiao Hua raised his eyes and looked towards the Rainbow Bridge. "Oh, a late-stage Foundation establishment disciple has already come out." Kwa Heng's heart was extremely refreshed. He pointed at the pitch-black hole and said, That's not right. When I entered the Rainbow Bridge just now, I felt some palpitation. I thought the Rainbow Bridge's restrictions were somewhat powerful, Xiao Hua thought to himself. Now that I've already come out of the Rainbow Bridge, why do I still feel palpitation? This feeling should be coming from the hand of karma. It has nothing to do with the Buddha's Sarira. Could it be that there's some karma entangling me? Fellow Daoist Xiao, how can you go back on your word? A loud and clear voice was heard. I waited for you in the departure heaven for a long time. I didn't expect you to leave the trial so early. In that case, your youth-retaining grass should have lost to I. When Xiao Hua raised his eyes, he saw that it was Kuo Yu. He was somewhat angrily shouting at him, Kuo Yu, don't be rude to fellow Daoist Xiao. Kuo Heng scolded. Fellow Daoist Xiao came out of the huge stone array. According to the rules of the previous trial, the first place of this trial belongs to him. Fellow Daoist Xiao felt that he was an outsider and didn't want to compete with you. That's why he came here to talk to this old man first. Tell me, if he went to the departure heaven, would you be his opponent? Moreover, even if he didn't go to the departure heaven, could you be considered to have one? Ah! Huge stone array? Is it the legendary huge stone array hidden in the Rainbow Bridge? Not only was Kuo Yu shocked, but the other late-stage Foundation establishment disciples were also incomparably astonished. Would this old man lie to you? Kuo Heng said with a smile. Alas, that's right. Kuo Yu sighed and hung his head dejectedly. Fellow Daoist Xiao passed through the departure heaven first. This servant has already lost. This token is fellow Daoist Xiao's. As he said that, Kuo Yu patted his storage bag and gave a pig-headed token to Xiao Hua. What is this? Kuo Heng obviously saw it for the first time. This disciple also doesn't know. I just picked it up in the sea a long time ago. Kuo Yu said helplessly. Don't look at this Xiao. This Xiao also doesn't know. This Xiao just thought it was fun. Xiao Hua took the token and hurriedly waved his hand. But how could Kuo Heng believe him? This youth-retaining grass is for fellow Daoist Kuo. Xiao Hua generously gave the youth-retaining grass to Kuo Yu. Really? In that case, many thanks, fellow Daoist Xiao. Kuo Yu was even more overjoyed and reached out to take the youth-retaining grass. Just when everyone was a bit envious, roar tilde an earth-shaking clear sound rang out, as if tens of thousands of bulls were roaring. The entire Scarlet Island was shaken. This sound was extremely similar to the sound Xiao Hua heard when the Great Flag Reef sunk into the Great Flag Reef. This is bad. Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed. He knew that the warning in his heart just now was probably the heavenly might triggered by this sound. Thus, without hesitation, he immediately flew up and shouted, Fellow Daoist Kuo, I'm afraid this Scarlet Island is about to sink. Previously, this was the situation that Xiao and I encountered on the Great Flag Reef. Quickly gather the disciples and escape. Immediately after, Xiao Hua sent out his divine sense and transmitted it to Xue Xue. Sure enough, before the sound disappeared from their ears, the Scarlet Island was greatly shaken. It was almost visible to the naked eye. Withdraw. Seeing such a situation, how could Kuo Heng dare to hesitate? His figure quickly flew up, and he unceasingly struck the pitch-black hole on the Rainbow Bridge in front of him with magic seals. A blood-colored halo was repeatedly emitted from the hole, and like flowing water, it quickly circled around the entire Rainbow Bridge. All the disciples training in the Rainbow Bridge revealed their bodies in an extremely terrifying manner. Kuo Qiao and Kuo Ryming's faces were even more ashen. No one knew the power of heaven and earth better than them. Rise tilde just when Kuo Heng stretched out his hand, like an eagle's claw, to grab the sea pearl from the disappearing Rainbow Bridge. Suddenly, in the direction of the setting sun outside the Scarlet Island, the sea surface within a range of several dozen li abruptly surged like boiling water. At this moment, the Scarlet Island was unexpectedly calm. An incomparably pure spiritual energy of heaven and earth overflowed from the sea surface. Along with the sea breeze, it blew to the Scarlet Island. This. Xiao Hua was originally looking for Xue Xue. Just as he was about to flee, he smelled something fresh from his nose and mouth. He immediately operated his cultivation method, and he felt that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was actually several times more than usual. He was slightly stunned. Buzz buzz tilde tilde tilde, like thousands of wasps flapping their wings, it was emitted from the bottom of the sea to the west of the Scarlet Island. Quickly look. Sword ruler fish beast. A sharp-eyed disciple was the first to see the sea beast in the surging sea foam. Before his voice fell, many strange sea beast corpses gushed out from the sea foam. Strange. Xiao Hua's divine sense swept out again. Unfortunately, the several dozen li of sea area seemed to be confined, and his divine sense couldn't explore at all. It was the same as the sinking of the Great Flag Reef. It was just that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was being absorbed that day, but now, it was actually gushing out. No way, the Great Flag Reef was brought here? Xiao Hua looked at Xue Xue in astonishment. Xue Xue was naturally also very surprised. Don't worry. Don't search for the sea beast. Kua Hang saw that some disciples were eager to give it a try and immediately warned. Then, Kua Hang patted the sea pearl again, and several blood-red flames flew out, hitting various parts of the Scarlet Island. With a wave of spiritual energy, the Scarlet Island's defensive array was activated to the extreme. Everyone stood in the air above the Scarlet Island, quietly looking at the vast sea area in the west. The corpses of various sea beasts were scattered all over, and in the surging waves, it was like a pot of meat soup. Another 5 minutes passed, and a smear of blood red rippled in the entire several dozen li of sea area, reflecting the setting sun. It was incomparably bloody. Tilde 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 sunset. Sunset Island. Kua Hang was so surprised that he couldn't close his mouth and couldn't help but groan. What? Sunset Island? Xiao Hua wasn't far from Kua Hang, and when he heard this, he couldn't help but be shocked. Isn't the Scarlet Island Sunset Island? No, Kua Hang said that the Scarlet Island can be called Sunset Island. Just as Xiao Hua was thinking, that blood-red color came from under the sea. It was actually a piece of land. Following a loud buzzing sound, a piece of land that was several dozen li darker than the Scarlet Island rose from under the sea. It was to the west of the Scarlet Island, in the direction of the setting sun. After the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, that vibration gradually stopped. Only then did the rising Sunset Island stop. At this time, Xiao Hua could already see clearly that the entire Sunset Island was in the shape of a huge oval. Most of it bulged above the sea surface, and it was really similar to the setting sun on the horizon, with a small part of it falling below the sea surface. Wasn't this Sunset Island? Things didn't end here. After the sound stopped, a blood-red brilliance flashed on the Sunset Island, and strands after strands, like a string of fireworks, came toward the Scarlet Island. -8. Chapter 2167. Wu tilde a whimper, which seemed to be from the formation of Blood-Red Island, also emitted a blood-red brilliance. Not only did it resonate with the brilliance of Sunset Island, but it also flowed in the direction of Sunset Island. Fellow Daoist Xiao, help me. Suddenly, Kua Hang hurriedly shouted. Ah! What's wrong? Xiao Hua heard the voice and looked over. He saw the ocean pearl in Kua Hang's hand overflowing with red light and growing bigger and bigger. Kua Hang urged his magic power to control it, but the ocean pearl actually showed signs of flying away. Kua Hang's magic power surged. Obviously, he had pushed his true essence to the extreme. Damn it, you're a golden core cultivator, Xiao Hua cursed in his heart. However, since he was here, he didn't dare to be careless. He hurriedly flew over and waved his big sleeve. The heaven and earth sleeve technique suddenly covered the ocean pearl. Xiao Hua was indeed smart. The heaven and earth sleeve technique was really the technique to control the ocean pearl. Wherever Xiao Hua's magic power went, the ocean pearl's brilliance flickered slightly. Then, like an obedient child, it slowly shrank. Hey! Xiao Hua suddenly had a feeling that if he used the heaven and earth sleeve technique a little more, he could take the ocean pearl from Kua Hang's hand. Xiao Hua's brows swept. Sure enough, Kua Hang's face was extremely ugly, and his eyes were slightly trembling. Ha 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 tilde Xiao Hua waved his sleeve and shrank his magic power by half. He laughed. Fellow Daoist Kwa, you're testing me. Kwa Hang's eyes suddenly opened. His other sleeve also covered the ocean pearl. His expression calmed down and he forced a smile. Right now, I'm afraid only fellow Daoist Xiao can help me in the entire Blood-Red Island. If not for fellow Daoist Xiao's help, this Blood-Red Island, Kwa Hang didn't say much. He urged his magic power and took the ocean pearl into his hand. Xiao Hua also took the opportunity to withdraw the Heaven and Earth Sleeve technique. Heaven and Earth Sleeve technique. Kwa Yu and the others were very close to Xiao Hua, so they naturally saw it. Everyone's eyes were wild with joy. Ha ha ha! Kwa Hang controlled the ocean pearl and laughed. I have good news to tell you. Thanks to fellow Daoist Xiao Hua of the Imperial Thunder Sect for the righteousness of returning my Blood-Red Island. No, my Setting Sun Island's long-lost Heaven and Earth Sleeve technique. Woo! Everyone cheered. After a while, Kwa Hang pointed at the Sunset Island and said, the universe in the sleeve technique has returned to the Sunset Island. The reappearance of the Sunset Island is a joyous occasion for the disciples of the Sunset Island. Seeing that all the disciples were puzzled, Kwa Hang said in a clear voice, I'm sure all of you know. My Kwa clan is an ancient clan. Although the bloodline is already thin, it is still an ancient bloodline. It is different from those people in the Kuei Sea who are selling dog meat under false pretenses. Ha ha ha! The group of Scarlet Island's disciples laughed loudly. Kwa Hang was in an extremely good mood. He waved his hand and said, actually, my Kwa clan didn't live on Scarlet Island in the beginning, but on Sunset Island. That is, the island in front of us that looks like the setting sun. At the same time, it was also the most powerful force in the Kuei Sea. This Blood-Red Island is only a place for the disciples of our Kwa family to cultivate and train themselves. At the same time, it is also one of the defensive formations of our Sunset Island. Millions of years ago, or even tens of millions of years ago, the records in the clan are no longer very detailed. This Sunset Island disappeared for some unknown reason. My Kwa clan will disappear as well. Only a few disciples who went out were lucky enough to escape and moved to this Blood-Red Island to live and reproduce. Now that the Sunset Island has reappeared in the Kuei Sea, it is the place where my Kwa clan's disciples will rise. It is also the beginning of my Kwa clan's disciples dominating the Kuei Sea. The group of disciples felt their blood boil after hearing Kwa Hang's words. Xiao Hua, who was at the side, was very emotional. Damn it. Being an island lord or sect master is really not to be underestimated. Just this ability to talk is more powerful than any cultivation or realm. I'm afraid I don't have a chance in this lifetime. With this ability of mine, I can only deceive little girls and tease little girls. It's really too difficult for this young master to deceive these old men. Alright, you all can go now and search for all the sea beasts in the surrounding sea. This is a gift from the ancestors of my Sunset Island. Kwa Hang waved his hand and said, also, as a guest of my Sunset Island, fellow Daoist Xiao happened to encounter a joyous occasion of my Sunset Island. I would like to invite fellow Daoist Xiao to be a guest of my Sunset Island and accompany me to the island first. Good. The group of disciples, especially the few late-stage Foundation Establishment disciples, all cheered, let alone Kwa Chiao and Kwa rhyming. Fellow Daoist Kwa, this is somewhat difficult for me, right? Xiao Hua naturally knew the role of a guest and said with a frown. Fellow Daoist Xiao, there is no need for you to do anything for my Sunset Island. Even if the Sunset Island has something to do, they will definitely not invite fellow Daoist Xiao over. Kwa Hang immediately transmitted his voice. Sunset Island has just appeared. I want to go to the island with the other elders. Those who are not cultivators of Sunset Island are not allowed to set foot on an island without cultivators. Otherwise, this island will be the first place where cultivators set foot on. I can't completely control Haiju now. If fellow Daoist Xiao doesn't help me, how can I control Sunset Island? While they were talking, several old cultivators flew over from afar. They were all late-stage Foundation Establishment and early-stage Golden Core cultivators. Presumably, they were the elders of Blood Ray Island who were attracted by the appearance of Sunset Island. I see. Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and asked again, in that case, if I become a guest of Sunset Island, then I can cultivate all the cultivation techniques of Sunset Island. Kua Hang saw Xiao Hua bargaining and said with a bitter smile, of course. However, apart from universe within sleeve and bone tempering technique, what other cultivation techniques do the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect covet? Didn't fellow Daoist Kua say before? This bone tempering technique is the foundation of another cultivation technique. This cultivation technique isn't universe within sleeve, right? Xiao Hua said proudly. Oh, that. When Kua Hang heard this, a trace of relief appeared on his face. However, at the same time, he was also regretful. He shook his head and said, I spoke too much. However, at that time, I also didn't know that Sunset Island would appear. That cultivation technique should be on Sunset Island. I only saw the records in the clan. As for whether it exists or not, fellow Daoist Xiao can cultivate it, that's not something I can know. Good. Xiao Hua immediately nodded. If fellow Daoist Kua agrees, then I will agree. Can this old man not agree? Kua Hang smiled bitterly as he looked at the group of excited disciples who were heading to the sea area to fish up sea beasts. There were also several elders who were about to arrive. What other choice do I have? Very good. Xiao Hua raised his hand and the two clapped their hands. Immediately, several elders flew over. Kua Hang told them the secret. Those elders were so excited that tears flowed down their old faces. Xiao Hua also greeted them. -8. Chapter 2168. Since he was a guest elder, Xiao Hua was also a member of the Sunset Island and a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, so the elders were very happy. Xiao Hua accompanied Kua Hang and prepared to board the Sunset Island. Shue followed Kua Qiao to board the island. At this moment, the entire defensive formation of the Sunset Island was open. The entire island was wrapped in a blood-red brilliance like a cocoon. Naturally, this brilliance was now connected with the light of the bloody red island. Kua Hang flew to the sky above the Sunset Island, patted his hand, and took out a blood-red jade slip from his storage bag. He looked at it carefully and released his divine sense to scan the entire island no less than 10 times. Only then did he come to the east side with some hesitation. Because the blood-red brilliance of the entire Sunset Island was the same, he couldn't see where the formation was. If Kua Hang didn't have the jade slip left by his clan, he probably wouldn't have found this place. It should be here. Kua Hang pointed his hand, but his finger was blocked by the blood-red brilliance. Xiao Hua had been frowning since he saw the blood-red brilliance. Now, after hearing Kua Hang's explanation, he shook his head and said, Island Master Kua, I have a question that I want to ask you. Elder Xiao, please ask. Kua Hang said without hesitation, Elder Xiao is now qualified to know the secret of the Sunset Island. There's no need to hide anything. Xiao Hua smiled as he pointed at the restriction and said, Island Master has already said that the Sunset Island has probably disappeared for millions or even tens of millions of years. In other words, the Sunset Island sank into the Kuai-He Sea for at least millions of years. Island Master Kua, do you think the restriction of the Sunset Island can still be so intact under the Kuai-He Sea? Oh, right. Kua Hang was shocked. He slapped his forehead and said, I was a bit too happy. I actually overlooked this matter. Sure enough, the expressions of the other elders and the few late-stage Foundation establishment disciples also change. No one knew the power of the Kuai-He Sea better than them. Not to mention the bottom of the sea, even on the surface of the sea, the restriction of the bloody red island relied on spirit stones to absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to maintain its defense. The Sunset Island sank into the sea. How great was the pressure of the sea? 10,000 years might be enough, but 100,000 years or even 1,000,000 years later, the restrictions on the Sunset Island would definitely not be intact. It would be normal if it was a dilapidated Sunset Island that had been eroded by the sea, but how could there be nothing strange about the appearance of such an intact Sunset Island? They were only focused on being happy and thinking about the return of their ancestors' property. They really didn't think about this. What does Elder Xiao mean? Kwa Hang's face was gloomy and uncertain. He had asked Xiao Hua to take action and become an elder because he wanted to quickly grasp the Sunset Island in his hands. He was afraid that a long delay would cause more trouble and cause other islands to covet it. Xiao Hua shook his head. This is just my guess. I really don't know how to deal with it. Island Master Kwa is the master of the island. This matter should be decided by the island master. Kwa Hang pondered for a moment before looking at the elders. Obviously, the people of Scarlet Island could not resist the temptation of the Sunset Island. After a few rounds of discussion, they unanimously decided to enter the Sunset Island. Xiao Hua was only a guest elder and was only temporarily helping Kwa Hang. Seeing this, he did not say anything else. Kwa Hang took out the sea pearl and urged it with his spiritual power. The sea pearl suddenly shone with a red light and almost broke free from Kwa Hang's control. As Kwa Hang used his spiritual power, the sea pearl actually turned into a piece of seaweed and floated toward the restriction of the Sunset Island. However, when the blood-red seaweed fell on the restriction, it did not merge into the restriction as everyone expected. Instead, it fell on a stone wall and slowly slid down. Kwa Hang's face was a little ugly. He covered it with his sleeve and used the Heaven and Earth sleeve to put it away. Then, he took out a jade slip. Obviously, he had misjudged the location. After a long while, Kwa Hang hesitantly placed the sea pearl about a foot away from where it was just now. However, to everyone's astonishment, the seaweed that the sea pearl had turned into did not have any reaction. It just slid down. This. Not only was Xiao Hua puzzled, but the elders and disciples of the Scarlet Island were also puzzled. They looked at each other several times, and their eyes were full of confusion. Kwa Hang was a little anxious. He scanned the area with his eyes and placed the sea pearls randomly on top of the restriction that was 10 feet away from him. He hoped that he would be able to touch the formation core that was close to him. Looking at Kwa Hang, who was like a headless fly, Xiao Hua laughed involuntarily. This half-sphere was huge, probably thousands of feet wide. Kwa Hang's attempt was simply like looking for a needle in a haystack. It was simply impossible. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua's heart moved. He stretched out his left hand and opened his spiritual eye. In his spiritual eye, the restriction of the entire Sunset Island was like an oval eggshell. On it, there was a thin layer of light curtain that revealed an extremely gorgeous red color. This light curtain was so round and so tight. Where could there be a formation eye for the sea pearl to be placed? This Kwa Hang, what the hell is he doing? Xiao Hua waved his hand and motioned for a late Foundation establishment disciple to come over. At this time, that disciple was full of admiration for Xiao Hua. He flew over and bowed. Kwa Yang greets Elder Xiao. May I know why Elder summoned me? This Xiao is not familiar with this Sunset Island. While Island Master Kwa is solving the formation here, why don't you take this Xiao to look around? Xiao Hua said warmly. Kwa Yang looked at the busy and even somewhat impatient Kwa Hang and smiled apologetically. This disciple can't help here. If Elder Xiao has an order, this disciple dares not to disobey. Good tilde. Xiao Hua nodded. He randomly picked a direction and flew towards the other side of the Sunset Island. Kwa Yang naturally nodded to the other elders and also followed Xiao Hua. Kwa Hang naturally sensed Xiao Hua's unusual movements, but he was now a little impatient. In addition, Kwa Yang was by Xiao Hua's side, so he no longer paid attention to him. He even whispered to the rest of the people to disperse and search for the source of the abnormality. The Sunset Island was huge. Xiao Hua circled the entire Sunset Island like a flickering light and passing shadow. Occasionally, he even flew high up in the sky to look at the entire Sunset Island from a bird's-eye view. After the time it took to eat a meal, Xiao Hua once again stopped in midair thoughtfully. He turned his head and asked, Kwa Yang, this Xiao wants to ask you. Do you know anything about the Sunset Island? Do you know why the Sunset Island suddenly appeared from the bottom of the sea? Elder Xiao knows. Kwa Yang cupped his hands and said, this junior has never heard of the Sunset Island. However, this junior does know that occasionally, some islands in the Gui Sea would suddenly be submerged by the sea. The people on the islands would have no way to escape. Of course, There are also reefs and islands that suddenly appear from the bottom of the sea. However, most of them are unknown. Only when people discover them later on will they know. Then, do you think that the position of the sunset island, or should I say, the position will change? Xiao Hua stared at a place not far from him and said very thought-provoking. Ayo, that's right. Hua Yang slapped his forehead and said in realization, when reefs and other objects sink into the sea, aren't there enormous whirlwinds and whirlpools? This sunset island will definitely move. Elder Xiao's words are very reasonable. Hehe, since that's the case, then Island Master Hua is still searching at the original place. Isn't it a bit too much? Xiao Hua said with a smile. Yes. Hua Yang said anxiously, Elder Xiao, please wait a moment. This disciple will inform Island Master. After saying that, Hua Yang hurriedly flew away. Not long after, Hua Heng and the others rushed over. Hua Heng's face actually had a trace of shame. When he saw Xiao Hua, he smiled apologetically and said, this old man has been in the Gui he see since young, but I didn't expect to come here. Elder Xiao, a newcomer to the Gui he see, actually thought of this. Xiao Hua said with a smile, Island Master Hua is in the middle of the situation. Naturally, there are some things that you can't see clearly. Moreover, this Xiao has just encountered the sinking of the Great Flag Reef. Naturally, this Xiao has some insights. Good Hua Heng said with a smile, this Hua will try it right now. Naturally, Xiao Hua couldn't stop at the formation eye that he saw. However, under everyone's speculation, Hua Heng tried again for a while and found the formation eye that Haizhu placed on the opposite side of the formation eye. As soon as the seaweed that Haizhu transformed into was placed into the formation eye, a dazzling brilliance burst out. Then, this brilliance spread out from the formation eye like ripples of water. As this brilliance flowed out, the entire blood-colored restriction was like a curtain being opened, revealing the true appearance of Sunset Island. What entered Xiao Hua's eyes was a similarly blood-colored island that was extremely similar to Blood Ray Island. However, right in the middle of this Sunset Island, there was an enormous palace built on the island, causing Xiao Hua to suck in a breath of cold air. Of course, Sunset Island was hundreds of feet above the sea surface, and the majestic palace built on it was precisely this palace. My goodness, this palace is probably the same as Haoming City's Shen Kong Pavilion. It's also an ancient ruin. Moreover, this ruin is probably real. While Xiao Hua was flabbergasted, the eyes of Hua Heng and the others flashed with a fervent brilliance. Elder Xiao. While Xiao Hua was in a daze, Hua Heng called out. Xiao Hua's divine sense swept over and saw that the Haizhu that had just recovered in front of Hua Heng suddenly shone brightly again and faintly showed signs of flying away. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly waved his sleeve and covered the Haizhu again. After the Haizhu stabilized, Xiao Hua said curiously, Island Master Hua, I really don't understand. Island Master Hua's cultivation and magic power are both stronger than mine. Even this heaven and earth sleeve spell is more exquisite than mine. Why? Hua Heng said with a wry smile, controlling this Haizhu requires the complete heaven and earth sleeve spell. It's useless to rely on magic power alone. Although Elder Xiao's cultivation is similar to mine, you've practiced the heaven and earth sleeve spell more than me. Xiao Hua suddenly understood and said with a smile, Island Master Hua, as long as you practice the heaven and earth sleeve spell for a while, you'll definitely surpass me. Why are you in such a hurry? The news of Sunset Island's appearance hasn't spread out yet. However, the tremors in Gui he see can't be hidden from people. When Scorching Sun Island, Iceblade Island, Gale Island, or Yangtze Island discover this matter, and my Blood Ray Island's disciples haven't set foot on Sunset Island, they'll have a reason to occupy this island. At that time, even if I completely master the heaven and earth sleeve spell, what's the use? Hua Heng explained. -8. Chapter 2169. So that's how it is. Xiao Hua nodded. No wonder Hua Heng would rather invite him as a guest elder and teach him a secret technique of the island that even he didn't know about in order to obtain Sunset Island as quickly as possible. What's next? Xiao Hua controlled the ocean pearl and asked, "Are we going directly to the island?" "Not yet." Kua Heng shook his head. "This ocean pearl only controls the outer defense of Sunset Island. I still need to use it to obtain the key to the entire forbidden technique of Sunset Island." "Oh." Xiao Hua smiled. "Then why don't you hurry up?" Kua Heng coughed awkwardly. "I still need Elder Xiao's help." Kua Heng transmitted a few words to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua frowned and said worriedly, "Island Master Kua, are you sure this will be fine?" "Yes." Kua Heng patted his chest. "This is the secret technique of the Sunset Island Master. I am quite confident." "All right." Xiao Hua nodded. "If anything happens, I won't take responsibility." "Ha ha ha, what can happen?" Kua Heng smiled. "Even if there is a problem, you are a guest elder of Sunset Island. At worst, I will give up my position and let you be the Island Master." "Island Master Kua, be careful with your words." Xiao Hua waved his hand. "I don't have that idea." However, Xiao Hua still muttered in his heart, "Damn it, I'm afraid there really is a problem." Sure enough, Xiao Hua waved his daoist robe and the ocean pearl flew into the air. Xiao Hua opened his mouth and spat a mouthful of true essence on the ocean pearl. The ocean pearl immediately melted into a red liquid. Next to him, Kua Heng formed a seal with both hands and hit the ocean pearl. Under Kua Heng's control, the ocean pearl gradually turned into a whirlpool. A strange suction force came from the whirlpool and rushed towards Sunset Island. Soon, a strange wave of energy appeared on the Sunset Island. A small, long piece of stone was pulled out from the top of the towering palace as if it was being pulled out by a great force. It flew towards the ocean pearl's whirlpool. Not long after, the stone flew in front of Xiao Hua and the others. Xiao Hua hesitated and said, "Island Master Kua, or elders, you can try it first." "I still want to be lazy." "All right." Kua Heng had no choice but to wave his sleeve and cast the universe within the sleeve's technique to envelop the stone piece. Unfortunately, the stone piece was not under his control and did not react at all. "Elder Xiao, if this old man can't do it, I'm afraid the other elders can't either." Kua Heng smiled bitterly. "I'll have to trouble Elder Xiao. This old man trusts you." "All right." Xiao Hua was helpless. He waved his hand and the heaven and earth in the sleeve was activated. The stone piece emitted a faint red color and slowly flew towards Xiao Hua. Although its movement was slow and its brilliance was extremely faint, there was still some reaction. Xiao Hua understood that his heaven and earth sleeve technique had not been completely mastered. If he could master it, it would be a completely different situation. Xiao Hua glanced at Kua Heng and reminded him, "I'm going to make a move." "Elder Xiao, please." Kua Heng was slightly hesitant, but he still nodded. Xiao Hua bit the tip of his tongue slightly, and a wisp of blood flew out and sprayed on the stone piece. The stone piece shone brightly, and the originally red brilliance actually gave birth to a golden color. Xiao Hua did not dare to be negligent and hurriedly cast a few hand seals. The stone piece immediately restrained its brilliance and actually trembled a little. "Go." Xiao Hua pointed his finger, and the stone piece flew in front of Kua Heng. He smiled and said, "Island Master Kua, please." "All right." Kua Heng let out a long sigh of relief. He also opened his mouth and spat a mouthful of essence blood on the stone piece. He cast a series of hand seals without hesitation, as if he had already recited them several times in his heart. Immediately, a red color flashed at the top of the stone piece and gradually moved down. When the red color submerged 10% of the entire stone piece, Kua Heng raised his voice and said, "Elder Xiao, you can take back the essence blood." "All right." Xiao Hua looked at Kua Heng with flickering eyes and smiled. He pointed his finger, and the golden light at the bottom of the stone piece flashed slightly and then disappeared. A wisp of blood still seeped out from the bottom of the stone piece and turned into a drop of blood that fell into Xiao Hua's hand. At this time, Kua Heng was truly relieved. He turned to the elders and said, "Elders, protect this old man while I refine this island's spirit stone." "Yes." The elders and late-stage Foundation establishment disciples of Bloodray Island all flew close and protected Kua Heng. Kua Heng sat cross-legged, and his hands were constantly forming hand seals. Various hand seals were cast on the stone piece. The stone piece shook incessantly, and the blood-colored brilliance gradually submerged the entire stone piece. After waiting for 2 hours, Kwa Hung let out a long howl and pointed his finger at the stone tablet. With a crisp peng sound, the stone tablet changed its appearance again. A stone tablet engraved with strange patterns appeared in the air. Kwa Hang scooped up the stone tablet and it obediently fell into his hand. Ayo, something's wrong. Xiao Hua's heart moved slightly. His earlier prediction had indeed come true. Although the stone tablet had been refined by Kwa Hang, Xiao Hua still had a feeling in his heart. He knew that as long as he had the intention, the stone tablet would immediately be moved by him. Kwa Hang's refinement was not complete. This is also good. Xiao Hua secretly said, I treat others with sincerity, but I can't guarantee that others will treat me with sincerity. Kwa Hang needs this Xiao now, so naturally, he will give up the position of an elder. If he doesn't need this Xiao in the future, he won't want to take out their so-called clan's secret technique. Who knows, there might be some black hand. With this guarantee, this young master's heart will be at peace. Oh, this stone tablet seems to have some patterns on it. Xiao Hua's mind was on the stone tablet, so he naturally took a few more glances. He saw that on the stone tablet, there was a giant who was taller than the nearby mountain peak. He held a wooden staff in his hand and was running. In front of him, there was a scarlet flame, which seemed to be the noon sun. However, without waiting for him to take another look, Kwa Hang had already picked up the stone tablet and pointed his hand. From the stone tablet, 8 scarlet rays of light flew out, respectively flying in all directions on the island. Rumble. A blood-red restriction formation rose up on the entire Sunset Island again. The magic power that imprisoned the divine sense disappeared. You all go and call the disciples to the Sunset Island. Elders, please arrange the chores here properly. 3 months later, my bloody red island will hold a ceremony to change its name to the Sunset Island. Kwa Hang turned his head and gave a few instructions. After everyone left, Kwa Hang said with a smile, Elder Xiao, this old man's feeling is incomparable. I believe Elder Xiao also knows what this Kwa Hang knows. Let's go, follow this old man to see the scenery of my Sunset Island. He, Island Master Kwa. Xiao Hua said with a smile, it's better not to see it. The more I see, the more puzzles I have in my heart. Hearing Xiao Hua's words, Kwa Hang nodded with a puzzled expression and said, exactly. This old man originally thought that there would be many white bones on the Sunset Island, the remains of my Kwa clan's ancestors from 1,000,000 years ago. However, on the entire Sunset Island, other than 3 strange white bones in the main hall, there isn't a single corpse on the entire Sunset Island. -8. Chapter 2170. Yes, there seems to be some spirit fields protected by restrictions in the back hall. There's nothing in there either. It seems that all the spirit grasses have withered. If there are a few 100-year-old spirit grasses, Island Master Kwa will be even happier. Xiao Hua continued. Anyway. Kwa Hang chuckled, although it's a bit strange, Sunset Island is the foundation of my Kwa family. I can't not move here. Of course I congratulate Island Master Kwa. Xiao Hua said with a smile, however, I'm more concerned about that cultivation method. Don't worry, Elder Xiao. Kwa Hang raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, the restriction around that cultivation method is intact. I've already sensed it. When we reach the main hall, I'll take Elder Xiao there. Great. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said, thank you, Island Master Kwa. No need to thank me. The entire Sunset Island was given to me by Elder Xiao. I'm the one who should thank you. Kwa Hang pulled Xiao Hua's robe and flew into the main hall. Standing at the entrance of the main hall, which was much taller than him, Xiao Hua felt like he was an ant. It wasn't just an impression, it was a kind of aura, a kind of majesty that came from the main hall. Looking at the 3 words Sunset Palace that were similar to the inscriptions on the main hall, Xiao Hua became thoughtful. These words were similar to the ones he saw in the Zhong family of Yun City. In the ancient times, could it be? There were other words besides the green seal script, the inscriptions on the armor, and the golden seal script. Xiao Hua was a bit confused. Otherwise, where did the current cultivation words come from? Elder Xiao, do you recognize these 3 words? Kua Hang glanced at Xiao Hua's eyes and said with a smile. Xiao Hua's heart moved and he said, of course I don't. However, besides Sunset Island, what else could it be? Ha ha ha. Kua Hang shook his head and said, these 3 words are Sunset Palace. Elder Xiao, you're wrong. Then he sighed and said, it's a pity that the jade slip that recorded these words wasn't left behind on Bloodray Island. After I move into Sunset Island, I'll search carefully. There must be a jade slip left behind on the island. Okay. Xiao Hua saw that Kua Hang didn't hide it and felt very gratified. He followed Kua Hang into the main hall. Everything in the main hall was huge. There were huge pillars, huge stone chairs, and huge tables. It was several times bigger than the main hall of the Misty Clouds sect. However, there were 3 skeletons on the ground. Only one of them belonged to a cultivator. The other 2 clearly didn't belong to cultivators. The 2 skeletons were 10 times bigger than Kua Hang, and each skeleton had 4 legs, each of which was as long as Kua Hang's leg. There was even a corpse with a tail that was longer than its body. If it weren't for the skeleton of that cultivator, Xiao Hua could still regard the other 2 as body cultivators like Kua Hang. However, compared with the skeleton of a cultivator, the difference was obvious. Demonic beast. Xiao Hua naturally saw it long ago, and he thought so at first. However, there was a storage pouch beside that cultivator's skeleton, and there were also 2 storage pouches beside the other 2 skeletons. It was just that these 2 storage pouches were somewhat different from the cultivator's storage pouch. This old man will take a look first. Kua Hang glanced at Xiao Hua and waved his hand. The cultivator's storage pouch flew into his hand. Huh! When Kua Hang scanned it with his divine sense, he couldn't help but be stunned. What's wrong? Xiao Hua asked curiously. Hehe, Elder Xiao, take a look for yourself. Kua Hang waved his hand and threw the storage pouch to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua took it and scanned it with his divine sense. He immediately understood. The storage pouch was a blur. The arrays inside had long been destroyed. There was nothing left behind, and he couldn't see anything from inside. While Xiao Hua was looking at the storage pouch, Kua Hang took the other 2 storage pouches and scanned them with his divine sense. He then threw them on the ground. Obviously, the arrays inside were damaged. What's this? Kua Hang's gaze fell on the white bone with the tail. He saw a dark ring on the white bone of the forelimb. It was about 4 fingers wide and seemed to be an armband. Kua Hang reached out and wanted to pick up the armband. However, just as he touched the armband touched the white bone. This simple touch shook the white bone into powder. What shocked Kua Hang even more was that the remaining white bone also turned into powder with the vibration. Oh, what's going on? Xiao Hua naturally saw this abnormality and couldn't help but be surprised. Obviously, this white bone seemed to have gone through millions or tens of millions of years. How could it become so fragile? Could it be? Xiao Hua guessed. The ancestors of the Sunset Island have all turned into white powder. This is strange. Kua Hang picked up the armband and scanned it with his divine sense. 2 things appeared in his hands. Xiao Hua's gaze swept over them, and a strange expression appeared on his face. Because in Kua Hang's hands, one was a token, and the other was a relic. On the token was a ferocious snake's head, and the relic was the size of a fist. Elder Xiao. Kua Hang looked at the token in his hand and said with a smile, "This seems to be what you want, right?" This is very strange. Xiao Hua touched his nose and said with a bitter smile, "This Xiao can swear that this Xiao is really just curious. Ha ha ha, Elder Xiao, look at you, how can this old man not believe you?" Kua Hang didn't doubt him at all and threw the token in his hand to Xiao Hua. "Thank you, Island Master." Xiao Hua took it and looked at the brand new token. It didn't have the slightest rust and he couldn't see any clues. He waved his hand and put it into the space. This thing seems to be a storage item. Unfortunately, the array inside has also collapsed. Just now, This old man only had time to take out these two things. Kwa Hang didn't regard himself as an outsider and showed the armband and the relic to Xiao Hua again. Xiao Hua followed his words and looked inside. Sure enough, the inside was also a piece of chaos. There was nothing inside. He looked at the fist-sized relic. It was crystal clear and there was a layer of milky white brilliance inside. It seemed to be a cross-legged Buddha statue. Island Master Kwa, if this thing is useless to you, this Xiao Hua asked tentatively. Elder Xiao, you can take it. Kwa Hang waved his hand and said, this thing doesn't belong to my Sunset Island. This Kwa is also not interested. If you want it, you can take it. However, if you find something related to my Sunset Island, please tell this old man. Haha, of course. Xiao Hua smiled as he placed the armband into his bosom. He also placed the Saria into his space and took the 3 storage pouches. These 2 skeletons. I'm afraid they can't move at all. Kwa Hang squatted down and looked at the skeletons and whispered to Xiao Hua. This Xiao also thinks so. Xiao Hua nodded. Huff. Kwa Hang raised his mouth and blew a breath of air. Hua tilde as the wind blew, the 2 skeletons collapsed and turned into 2 pieces of white powder. Alas, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Kwa Hang waved his daoist robe. As the breeze blew, 3 piles of white powder rose up and soon drifted in the air, leaving no trace behind. Ouch! Xiao Hua's eyes narrowed as if he thought of something. However, before he could think carefully, another wave of serious palpitations suddenly came. Could it be that this warning sign didn't appear on Sunset Island? Xiao Hua was shocked. It seems that there is still an unknown danger. Island Master Kwa, Xiao Hua said somewhat anxiously. This Xiao suddenly thought of something and is in a hurry to leave. What is the cultivation method that Island Master Kwa is talking about? Where is it on Sunset Island? This Xiao wants to take a look first. If there is no fate, this Xiao will take a look and leave. There is no need to be in such a hurry, right? Kwa Hang said curiously, Sunset Island has just appeared. There will be an island establishment ceremony in 3 months. Fellow Daoist Xiao is a guest of Sunset Island and should attend. Xiao Hua shook his head. It's not that this Xiao doesn't want to stay. This is no small matter. This Xiao can't wait. All right. Kwa Hang clapped his hand and took the stone tablet in his hand. After he immersed his divine sense in it, he pointed his finger. A trace of blood flashed on the stone tablet. It was a rumbling sound coming from the inner hall in the distance. Kwa Hang's face lit up and he said with a smile, this old master is fortunate to have not failed you. This is one of the forbidden areas of Sunset Island. Those who are not elders or above are not allowed to enter. Since fellow Daoist Xiao is a guest elder, you can naturally enter. Please. All right. Xiao Hua knew that this was not the time to be polite, so he nodded and followed Kwa Hang into the inner hall. Could it be that this Kwa Hang has bad intentions towards this young master? Xiao Hua was somewhat suspicious as he flew. However, the problem was that this stone tablet had gone through Xiao Hua's blood, so there was a trace of gold left in it. This trace of gold was enough for Xiao Hua to control the stone tablet when Kwa Hang controlled it to attack Xiao Hua. In other words, Kwa Hang couldn't threaten Xiao Hua. What kind of warning sign is that? Xiao Hua was suddenly shocked. Could it be that Sunset Island will sink again? However, looking at Kwa Hang's excited appearance, even if he told Kwa Hang that Sunset Island would sink again, Kwa Hang definitely wouldn't believe him. Elder Xiao, it's right here. After flying past a few restrictions and a few corridors that looked like a maze, Kwa Hang pointed at a small house that was only 3 meters tall and said, inside the small house is the most important place where the cultivation methods of my Sunset Island are recorded. However, at this point, Kwa Hang was somewhat hesitant. Are there any taboos? Xiao Hua asked with a frown. If this old master says it now, Elder Xiao, I'm afraid that this old master will think that this old master is deceiving Elder. Kwa Hang smiled bitterly. It's probably because this old master didn't say it clearly earlier. It doesn't matter. Island Master Kwa, please say it. Xiao Hua smiled. Kwa Hang said embarrassedly, earlier Elder Xiao asked what cultivation method it was. Actually, This old master also doesn't know, because this forbidden area has some strange rules. Hey! This Xiao is even more curious. Xiao Hua's curiosity was piqued. Yes, every Sunset Island disciple above the rank of elder can enter this forbidden area to comprehend the bone tempering technique after mastering it. Kua Hang thought for a moment and said very seriously, however, this opportunity only comes once, and it's only for a day. No matter if you comprehend it or not, you have to come out after a day and a half. After you come out, no matter how much you comprehend, you can't teach it to other disciples, and you can't tell others what you've comprehended. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote for it. -8. Chapter 2171. Oh my! Xiao Hua almost stuck out his tongue. This rule is too strange. Aren't the seniors of the Sunset Island afraid that this cultivation method will be lost? I don't know either. Kua Hang shook his head. I haven't completed the bone tempering technique yet, so I didn't think about it before. Now, I have to consider when I can enter after completing the bone tempering technique so that I won't waste this 1 day and 1 night opportunity. All right. Xiao Hua muttered, I don't know when I can come to the Gui he see in the future, so I'll go in and take a look first. Elder Xiao, actually, your body refining technique has already surpassed this old man's. If you continue to comprehend the bone tempering technique of my Sunset Island, you will have a chance to comprehend this secret technique in the future. Why are you in such a hurry? Kua Hang was sincerely thinking for Xiao Hua. Don't, Xiao Hua thought. If my premonition is correct, the Sunset Island may sink again in the next few days. I'd better hurry and take a look first. Hehe, I'm very curious. If I know about this, I'll definitely go in and take a look. Otherwise, I wouldn't have collected those tokens of unknown origin, Xiao Hua said while touching his nose. All right. Kua Hang pointed his finger at the stone tablet. With a rumbling sound, a stone door rose from the inside of the small house. Elder Xiao, go in. After 1 day and 1 night, the stone door will naturally open. Elder Xiao, you have to come out immediately. Otherwise, I won't be able to open the stone door unless there's no life in the small house. I know. Xiao Hua nodded and was about to walk through the stone door when he turned around and said, Island Master, the Sunset Island has just risen from the sea. Who knows if it will sink again? Island Master should be prepared. Hehe, don't worry, Elder Xiao. Kua Hang smiled mysteriously. How can I not know? If there's any movement, the island guarding spirit stone will definitely inform me. Of course. Xiao Hua patted his forehead and said with a smile, I don't control this spirit stone, so I don't know its magical uses. Then, Xiao Hua walked into the small house with a big smile. Kua Hang saw Xiao Hua's figure disappear and the big rock fell down. He didn't waste any more time and turned around to fly away. The Sunset Island had just appeared. He had too many things to arrange. Xiao Hua's matter was really insignificant. When Xiao Hua entered the hut, his divine sense was immediately confined, unable to leave his body at all. His gaze swept across the 4 walls inside, but he didn't find anything special. He only felt that there seemed to be a strange magic power fluctuation inside the walls, which should be a kind of strange restriction. Xiao Hua's eyes swept across the room, and when he saw that the 4 walls were filled with these words, he unconsciously relaxed his brows. Because the handwriting was the same as the Sunset Palace engraved outside the main hall. It was similar to the inscriptions on the armor, and it was also a type that Xiao Hua was familiar with. Great! Xiao Hua couldn't help but rejoice at what he had done in Zhongling Mountain Villa. If he didn't care about Zhong Tianyao life and death that day and only took the 2 pieces of gold foil away, not only would he not get refining the world, he wouldn't get the 5 elements refining technique, and it would be even more impossible for him to know the words similar to the inscription of armor. Then, when he came here, he could only waste 1 day and 1 night in vain, giving spiritual herbs to others, leaving a lingering fragrance in my hand. Xiao Hua sighed. Old friends really don't deceive me. However, Xiao Hua's sigh hadn't finished yet. His gaze swept across a wall, where the starting point of the cultivation method was. He unconsciously stood on the spot, his mouth still muttering, "What? Celestial body empowerment technique? How is there such a cultivation method?" However, this still wasn't what shocked Xiao Hua the most. By the time he finished reciting the general outline, his two eyes were shining. A kind of fervor, a kind of absolute disbelief, was revealed on his face, which was practically unperturbed by favor or disgrace. Is there really such a miraculous arcane effort? But pouring all kinds of spiritual energy into the body, and forcibly raising the magic power? Not afraid of any bottleneck, not afraid of any chi deviation? No wonder the bone tempering technique is only the foundation. Without the bone tempering technique as the foundation, the body would have collapsed long ago. No wonder this secret technique can't be spread outside. If half a word was leaked out, wouldn't it have set off a reign of terror in the Dawn Rain continent long ago? The simplest thing is, this Sunset Island would have been the one to suffer the most. Right, why didn't Kwaheng make me swear a heart oath? Could it be that he knows I won't spread it? Or maybe, he doesn't think I can understand it? Xiao Hua pondered again. Forget it, who cares, hurry up and comprehend it. There's only one day and one night, time is tight. Thinking, Xiao Hua sat cross-legged, hurriedly reading from the first sentence of the Celestial Body Empowerment Technique. Soon, one day and one night passed. When the huge stone of the hut rose, Xiao Hua's figure walked out of the hut with joy in his eyes, seemingly with a kind of doubt. "Elder Xiao, please follow this old man's guidance." Kwaheng's voice sounded in Xiao Hua's ear. "This old man is in the main hall right now, and has no time to come and pick up Elder." Well said. Xiao Hua understood that this was done by Kwaheng using the island guarding spirit stone. He turned his head to look at the hut that was closed again, and followed Kwaheng's guidance to the main hall. At this time, the main hall was already in order. Several elders and dozens of disciples were sitting in an orderly manner. Kwaheng sat at the head, while Xue and Kwa Chiao sat at the side. When Xue saw Xiao Hua appear, a smile appeared on her face. Obviously, she had been worried for one day and one night. "Elder Xiao, did you get anything?" Kwaheng smiled. "Ha ha ha. Island Master is testing me." Xiao Hua smiled but didn't answer. "Ha ha ha, yes." Kwaheng nodded. "Presumably, Elder Xiao is also wondering why I didn't make you swear a heart oath, right?" "Yes, that's right." Xiao Hua smiled. "Elder Xiao, you don't know, this is a kind of charm of my Kwa family." Kwaheng smiled. "As long as you enter that hut, you will be restricted by the charm, and there is no need for any heart oath." "Ah, I see." Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. He didn't blame Kwaheng for not telling him that day. He knew that even if he knew the reason, he would still have to enter. As for the charm, was Xiao Hua afraid? That day, the charm of the disciples of Sunset Island was probably not too important. As for Xiao Hua's doubts, it was a warning sign. Even now, he still hadn't found any clues. "Elder Xiao, please sit." Kwaheng waved his hand. This old man still has some things to discuss with the elders. When Xiao Hua heard this, he immediately cupped his hands. "Island Master Kwa, I already told you yesterday that I really have something that I can't avoid. Ari, okay." Kwaheng seemed to have known that Xiao Hua would say this. He clapped his hand and took out a token, flying in front of Xiao Hua. "This is my Sunset Islands token. Elder Xiao, please keep it well." "Okay, this is no problem. If Sunset Island has any problems in the future, please inform me." Xiao Hua took the token and said bluntly. -8. Chapter 2172. Great. Kwaheng was overjoyed when he saw that Xiao Hua didn't decline and even said such words. He opened another storage pouch and handed it over with a smile. "This is the harvest of my Sunset Island disciples yesterday. Elder Xiao, you don't have to be polite." "Good." Xiao Hua took it and cupped his hands. "I don't dare to stay any longer. Island Master Kwa, elders, I'm really sorry." Xiao Hua raised his eyes to signal Xue. Xue immediately got up and followed Xiao Hua out of the hall. Kwaheng was quite surprised to see Xiao Hua so anxious. He naturally thought of the secret technique in the small house on Sunset Island. Unfortunately, because of the power of the talisman, Kwa Hang didn't dare to ask more. He also knew that Xiao Hua would absolutely not say. Therefore, Kwa Hang was somewhat hesitant. Yes, now that Kwa Hang had the island guarding spirit stone, the entire Sunset Island's forbidden technique was under his control. This day and night, Xiao Hua did his best to comprehend the immortal body bestowment technique and didn't have time to be distracted. Kwa Hang also didn't idle. Kwa Hang didn't pay attention to the relocation of the Scarlet Island disciples. Instead, he put all his attention on refining the island guarding spirit stone. Yesterday's spell was just a simple control of the island guarding spirit stone with the help of Xiao Hua's heaven and earth sleeve. As for the real control, it would be as natural as the palm of one's hand. After all, Kwa Hang was only a gold core cultivator. Should I do something? Kwa Hang's heart inevitably wavered. After all, Xiao Hua was a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. Kwa Hang was really worried. However, just as Kwa Hang's fingers moved slightly, as if he was going to touch his storage pouch, Xiao Hua suddenly turned around and said with a smile, "Island Master Kwa, is there anything else you haven't told me?" Kwa Hang was startled, and sweat appeared on his back. He waved his hand and said, "No, this old man thought that you left in such a hurry and felt really apologetic. I wanted to see if there was anything in the storage pouch." "Ha ha ha, Island Master Kwa, no need to be polite. This Xiao is already a guest of Sunset Island. I'll have plenty of opportunities to come again in the future." Xiao Hua, who released his Buddhist consciousness, laughed loudly. His eyes flashed a trace of seriousness, and he quickly walked out. Forget it. Kwa Hang didn't think that Xiao Hua could see through his actions or intentions. "I'm afraid this is God's will. This old man will believe in Xiao Hua." Immediately, Kwa Hang, along with several elders and a dozen disciples, followed Xiao Hua out of the main hall. Seeing that Sunset Island was busy, the disciples slowly moved all their belongings to Sunset Island. Xiao Hua was nervous and didn't dare to stay for a long time. He casually said a few polite words to Kwa Hang and the others, then took Shueishue's hand and flew towards the Dawn Rain continent. The two of them flew for an hour in one breath. Only when they saw an uninhabited island in front of them did Xiao Hua slowly descend. He felt that the throbbing in his heart had somewhat calmed down. "Husband, why are you in such a hurry?" Shueishue asked curiously. "Are you rushing back to the Imperial Thunder sect?" He. Xiao Hua sensed again and found that the warning sign had disappeared. He immediately said with a mischievous smile, "Wife, there are many people on Sunset Island." Bah! Shueishue's divine sense swept over and found that there were no traces of people nearby. Her face slightly reddened and her body gradually heated up. She reached out and pinched Xiao Hua's arm, saying angrily, "You impatient little husband." Just as Xiao Hua was about to move, a cold feeling suddenly emerged from his back. It was as if he was being stared at by a poisonous snake. An incomparable sense of danger caused his heart to swell and burst. That restless feeling immediately disappeared like a gust of wind. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent. His figure flashed and he immediately flew away with Shueishue, flying straight towards the depths of Kuhei Sea. Husband, what are you doing?" Shueishue looked at Xiao Hua's deathly pale face, and the surrounding scenery that was rapidly retreating. Xiao Hua actually used the bright thunder escape to escape at the fastest speed. "Ah!" Shueishue was instantly shocked. Like Xiao Hua, the beautiful thoughts in her heart instantly disappeared. Feeling Shueishue's body stiffen, Xiao Hua knew that Shueishue already understood the situation. He used all his magic power and didn't even have time to speak. "Husband," Shueishue whispered, "did you encounter an enemy?" How could Xiao Hua speak? Right now, his back was covered in goosebumps. He felt as if there was a snake chasing after him, and yet, even when he released his divine sense, he still couldn't find any clues. In fact, that feeling was getting more and more serious, as if this threat was getting closer and closer. After another half cup of tea's time, Xiao Hua suddenly stopped in the air and let go of Shueishue. He said anxiously, "Wife, husband can't talk to you anymore. There seems to be a fatal threat approaching." Husband will do his best to escape. You have to know that husband's senses have always been very sharp. Husband can't bring you into this whirlpool. As he spoke, Xiao Hua clapped his hand, took out the token of Sunset Island, and handed it to Xue Xue. Take this token of Sunset Island back, and ask Hua Heng to send disciples to escort you back to the thunder-controlling sect. Even if they can't go, they have to send you to Haoming City or Yun City. In short, ask Yu Chen or Zhong Tianyaro to send disciples to escort you back to the thunder-controlling sect. Tell them that husband has some urgent matters to attend to. When husband is done, I will definitely thank them. Then, he didn't dare to say another word. He raised his head to identify the direction and flew towards the north of Kuhei Sea. Okay. Xue Xue accepted the token from the Sunset Island. Her tears had already fallen. She knew that her cultivation was too shallow. She couldn't help Xiao Hua at all. Instead, she had become a burden to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua had abandoned her and traveled alone. It seemed very heartless, but in fact, it was the greatest protection for her. Xue Xue fiercely bit her pearly white teeth and a trace of blood was left on them. But then, Xue Xue seemed to wake up and said loudly, "Husband, don't be afraid. This time you will definitely." However, Xiao Hua's bright thunder escape was so fast. In just a moment, it was about to disappear. There was only a vague figure in the distance. How could Xiao Hua hear it? How did Xue Xue know that Xiao Hua would definitely be fine this time? It's really strange. Xue Xue identified the direction and was about to fly in the direction of Sunset Island. However, her heart stirred and she put away the token. She remained calm and unruffled in the midst of chaos. She lightly floated up and flew in the direction Xiao Hua had come from. While flying, Xue Xue greedily looked at the sea. Occasionally, she would descend and seemed to check the sea beasts in the sea. In less than the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, a powerful divine sense suddenly swept over from afar and swept over the entire range of 100 miles. That divine sense was so powerful that Xue Xue couldn't determine the cultivation of the person who came. However, Xue Xue immediately locked onto that person. After a moment, a figure turned into a rainbow and flew over from afar. Ah! A nascent soul cultivator. Xue Xue slightly sensed and immediately felt as if her scalp was about to explode. She hastily bowed and stood in midair. She didn't dare to raise her head and respectfully welcomed the person. She really couldn't think of when Xiao Hua provoked a nascent soul cultivator and was actually being hunted down. This person was naturally Changbai sect's Daoist Jing Ryu. Daoist Jing Ryu only paused for a moment. Her gaze swept over Xue Xue and she immediately moved away. Her figure didn't stay any longer and turned into a rainbow, flying in the direction Xiao Hua flew toward. Xue Xue waited until Daoist Jing Ryu flew far away before she finally relaxed. Her heart was beating wildly and she was somewhat apprehensive. She was also very bold. Fortunately, Daoist Jing Ryu didn't know that there was a female cultivator besides Xiao Hua. Otherwise, Xue Xue might really be in danger. Of course, since Xue Xue dared to test Daoist Jing Ryu like this, she probably had something in her heart to rely on. Not to mention Xue Xue returning to Sunset Island, Xiao Hua had been flying all the way. In his heart, he had already cursed Daoist Jing Ryu to the heavens. If cursing could be used as a magic technique, Daoist Jing Ryu would have long been riddled with holes by Xiao Hua's curses. Which family's child is this? Why is he so insensible? He didn't even say hello and just chased after me. In the end, Xiao Hua really didn't have the heart to curse. He very helplessly thought to himself as he flew away with all his might. Huh! Where is this guy? Is there something wrong with this tracking technique of mine? While Xiao Hua was bewildered, Daoist Jing Ryu was also puzzled. They had already chased him to the depths of the Kuehe Sea, so why hadn't they found any traces of Xiao Hua? Moreover, according to Daoist Jing Ryu's sea chart, Xiao Hua seemed to be heading towards the northwest of the Kuehe Sea. Oh my, could it be that this guy actually knows that this old man is chasing after him? Could it be? This guy's flying technique is very fast. Daoist Jing Ryu suddenly came to a realization. -8. Chapter 2173. Previously, although Daoist Jing Ryu chased Xiao Hua to the Kuei He Si using a secret technique, he didn't put Xiao Hua in his eyes. Moreover, Xiao Hua's position didn't change at all. Therefore, Daoist Jing Ryu chased after him slowly and didn't use much magic power. Now, Daoist Jing Ryu discovered that Xiao Hua's position suddenly changed and seemed to be far away from him. That flying speed was absolutely terrifying for a Foundation establishment cultivator. He couldn't help but reconsider the problem of how to kill Xiao Hua. I absolutely can't let Xiao Hua go ashore. Daoist Jing Ryu narrowed his eyes. The magic power in his body suddenly surged and he struck out with a spell. A faint red shadow appeared in front of him and he sped up again. Daoist Jing Ryu's flying speed increased again and unexpectedly intercepted Xiao Hua horizontally. Why does it feel so intense? Xiao Hua was alarmed. His magic power had already been pushed to the limit. The true essence in his body wasn't little consumed during this period of time. The true essence generated by the mental cultivation method was gradually unable to keep up with the consumption of the bright thunder escape. What should I do? Xiao Hua also released his Buddhist sense. Unfortunately, although his Buddhist sense had a much larger range than his divine sense, it still couldn't discover Daoist Jing Ryu. Moreover, in his Buddhist sense, all he could see was the boundless sea. There was no land at all. Xiao Hua could only rely on the lightning escape technique to escape. Earth escape, wood escape, and fire escape were all useless. If only there was a water escape technique. Xiao Hua was somewhat rueful. Just as he was thinking, his Buddhist sense suddenly encountered an extremely powerful divine sense. Nascent soul cultivator. In an instant, Xiao Hua determined the cultivation level of the newcomer. When did I offend a nascent soul cultivator? Xiao Hua's face was pale. At this moment, Daoist Jing Ryu's divine sense seemed to have sensed something and immediately probed towards his Buddhist sense like a tentacle. How could Xiao Hua dare to let his Buddhist sense stay? He immediately withdrew his hand and formed a water-dispelling technique, plunging into the Kuei He Si. However, in merely a moment, Xiao Hua came out of the Kuei He Si again and cursed inwardly. Damn it, this young master's brain is dizzy from being chased by that damned nascent soul cultivator. This young master's flying speed in the Kuei He Si can't compare to flying in the air. I actually want to escape in the Kuei He Si. Won't be caught by that bastard soon. Immediately after, Xiao Hua flicked his hand and took out a bright flower pill. He consumed it without the slightest hesitation and did his best to activate his mental cultivation technique to refine it. He once again increased the speed of the bright thunder evasion. Xiao Hua's divine senses once again, SSS once again, his sense. He was a lot closer to him. Not SSS. SSS. TTSSSS. Ts. His S have TST. SSSS SSSS Chis SS Tiens his TTS tus to T he tus. ATSS to TTSS. The rich spiritual chi of heaven and earth quickly evaporated. Right at this moment, Xiao Hua's heart was moved again. Sunset Island's imbuement technique was precisely to directly inject endless heaven and earth spirit chi into the body, borrowing the valiant body to convert the heaven and earth spirit chi into true chi, and then inject it into the meridian. The efficiency of this conversion was related to the cultivator's fleshly body. If one's physical body was strong enough, they would naturally be able to convert more heaven and earth spiritual chi. Otherwise, if too much heaven and earth spiritual chi entered one's physical body could even explode. The disciples of the Sunset Island had to practice the bone tempering technique first. They could only practice the body imbuing technique after their bodies were fully developed. And Xiao Hua is not as good as Kwa Heng. He has long practiced the bone tempering technique, and his bones have already been refined to one color. At this time, using the immortal baptism technique is just right for him to bring out the best in each other. As soon as Xiao Hua used the body imbuing technique, the earth spirit chi of heaven and earth that was wrapped in the innermost layer of his body immediately entered his fleshly body. Under the urging of Xiao Hua's cultivation method, strands of spiritual chi were refined and poured into his meridians. Although Xiao Hua was a beginner, The amount of spiritual qi he could refine at the beginning wasn't much, and the amount of true essence he could increase was even less. But now that he was being chased to the point of urgency, this strand of true essence could be urged to fly. At a critical moment, this strand of true essence could be used to save his life. After another hour, Daoist Jing Ayu caught up a bit closer. Xiao Hua could almost use his Buddhist sense to perceive that Daoist Jing Ayu's divine sense was already only a few dozen feet away from here. This won't do, I can't keep flying like this. This guy seems to know that this young master wants to fly towards the Dawn Rain continent. Xiao Hua made a prompt decision, turning his head and flying towards the interior of the Gui He Sea. Xiao Hua's move actually caught Daoist Jing Ayu somewhat unprepared. Although he had some secret techniques, he couldn't always check. By the time he checked again, Xiao Hua had already flown extremely far away. How did this guy know that this old man was chasing after him? Xiao Hua's change of direction made Daoist Jing Ayu even more aware. However, he also became even more confused. If he's a nascent soul cultivator, this old man would still suspect that he has some magical ability. But a foundation establishment cultivator, how is that possible? PH, why think so much? Capture him and directly search his soul. If there's something good, this old man's anger will be appeased. If there's nothing good, this old man's face will be restored. Daoist Jing Ayu had long regarded Xiao Hua as a dead man. However, Daoist Jing Ayu chased for more than 2 hours. Xiao Hua was like a slippery loach. Within the range of his secret technique, he seemed to already be near, but his divine sense couldn't find him. Moreover, whenever Daoist Jing Ayu had some certainty, Xiao Hua would suddenly change direction. Damn it! Daoist Jing Ayu also cursed. He really didn't expect that killing a trifling foundation establishment cultivator would be so troublesome. After thinking for a moment, Daoist Jing Ayu's eyes flashed with a trace of cold light. He withdrew his divine sense, slowed down his flying speed, and put part of his magic power into the secret technique. Sure enough, the direction indicated by the faint blood color was especially messy at first. One moment it was east, the next it was west, and it was even going up. However, after half a meal's time, it said that it was stable, and it kept going in the direction of the Dawn Rain continent. Hee. Daoist Jing Ayu saw that the fish had taken the bait, and a cruel smile hung on his face. He put away the secret technique, aroused his magic power, and intercepted Xiao Hua's direction. As for Xiao Hua, when he released his Buddhist sense, he didn't encounter Daoist Jing Ayu's divine sense. Knowing that he had shaken off Daoist Jing Ayu, he felt relieved and took advantage of this opportunity to quickly fly in the direction of the Dawn Rain continent. However, just when Xiao Hua was slightly proud of himself and felt that he had shaken off the other party, that feeling of dread that had previously disappeared because of Daoist Jing Ayu's appearance once again attacked him. Good heavens Tilda, could it be that there's another nascent soul cultivator chasing after this young master? Xiao Hua was completely stupid. One nascent soul cultivator was already enough for him to suffer. If there was another, wouldn't he be caught like a turtle in a jar? -8. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.